Blog Talk Radio.
Thank JAH, Rastafari. It's Friday. Yay, 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 yay.
Shabbat Shalom. A song for the days already inside your home.
Messianic candle lighting blessing for the Shabbat in the Hebrew and the English tongue. Baruch atah Yahweh, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'zivanu lehiyot ur lagoyim, banatan lanu et Yehoshua, Mishianu, Ur Ha'olam. Blessed is Yahweh Almighty, our King of the universe, who sanctifieth we, Yahweh's people, with his commandments, and commanded we, Yahweh's people, to be a light to the nations, and who gave to we, Yahweh's people, Yehoshua, our Messiah, the light of the world.
Thank JAH, Rastafari.
JAH, Rastafari. JAH, Rastafari. JAH, Rastafari.
Friday. Yay, 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 yay. Besm Ab, Wawalid, Wamenfes Kedus, Ahadu Amla, Ze Kedamit, Ye Kedamit, Besen Bet Ken, Meskel Abra, Samayin Bekwakabit, Shelame, Kohulum Yilik, Sahayin Asaye, Meskel Abra, Samayin Bekwakabit, Shalom. On the Sabbath eve, the cross shined and had the heavens embroidered with stars. Of all the sun is seen, the cross shined and had the heavens embroidered with stars.
My God, it's full of stars. My God, it's full of stars, full of stars, full of stars, full of stars.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day, and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth, when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew.
Shabbat, 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 this is the Shabbat day. Shabbat, Shabbat, holy Shabbat, this is the holy day. Shabbat, 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 this is the Shabbat day. Shabbat, Shabbat, holy Shabbat, this is the holy day. Work all week and now it's time to rest. Took up the food and everything blessed. Read back and pull the scriptures out. Family reading what it's all about. Giving full attention to the Most High of creation. He hallowed it and made it a holy day. Separation. To be one with the Most High and feeling set. Destructions of the world have to be absent. We have to remember the fourth commandment until thy kingdom come. Shabbat, 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 this is the Shabbat day. Shabbat, Shabbat, holy Shabbat, yes it is the holy day. Shabbat, 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 yes, this is the Shabbat day. Shabbat day. Shabbat, Shabbat, holy Shabbat, yes, this is the only day. Only day. I'm duty free from my responsibility for servitude. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's what the Father said we're supposed to do. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by the words that proceeded by him that sits up on the highest throne. From the heaven to the earth, angel and man abstain from birth. Just as it was from in the first, why should I divert? Even love forsake vacation, traveling and spending time one-on-one. It's a way of strengthening their union. We should do the same thing with the Almighty One. Shabbat, 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 yes, this is the Shabbat day. Shabbat day. Shabbat, Shabbat, holy Shabbat, yes, this is the only day. Shabbat, 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 yes, this is the Shabbat day. Shabbat day. Shabbat, Shabbat, holy Shabbat, yes, this is the only day.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat.
והיו הדברים האלה אשר נושאים מצוותך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך וציוורת בם ושיבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ושכבך ובומך וכתבת מאוד על ידיך והיו לתוספות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Know of a surety that thy seed will be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. And they shall enslave and oppress them for 400 years. In the fourth and in the last generation. Yes, you shall journey into captivity a second time in ships. Because you have rejected his instruction.
My advice to all is to fulfill the Ten Commandments. You are aware of the contents of the Ten Commandments and elaborate on. If the nation for which I am the emperor follows and accepts this, since it's also what I accept and follow. I would believe our country is not only historically Christian, but also actively Christian.
The book of life, sip the water from the brook of life. Look at the animal in them pot, but them a cook a spice. You, what you say I do, should be true, true. life. Them got eyes to knife, but them a joke at life. Them all that dash them with them let them look at life. Them said them want them win to go to heaven to look for Christ. While them a bow down and a worship them images. I went keep judging like children, it's the foreign, never wrong nor fall. So still in it, I live it like privilege in all the villages to live. So life is crazy for peace and finite stages. I not open no wages when Babylon plaguing. Them separate man and woman, lock them in a cage. Them some more sodomite-less babies. Them some more birth and child and abortion for the ladies for ages. The book of life pages. Babylon wants near and tear up. When them sodomy affair, through them come far with the sir. Them need to veneer like eyesight or crystal clear. You air, food for the children to share. The youth need love and care. Clothes of someone wear, car with them a stare. Post and money make them eye flare and live in fear. They call us squatters, crop the treat us very raw. Children starving, time so very low. To be the pagan gospel, show them blood love. Craving for more than enough. Not about money and religion, make them happy and prosperous. Still I see more problem and that's far for us. From birth the pagan been after us. They got crosses the polkas and chops for us. So many gone straight to that I listen like the Mussolini. Them get filthy shot them. Still gonna kill like hatred. Them get defeat, no fear them weapon or them face it. Money man, them stop them little sister and them brother girl. All chop off them father and them mother and them set them search the sky and said them search not the rest and said them still can't find their son. The book of life, Babylon want tear up. When them sodomy affair, through them come far with the fair. Them need to veneer like I take the crystal clear. Yeah, she's there for the children to share. The youth need love and care. Clothes of summer wear, car with them a stare. Horse and money make them eye flare and live in fear. And last they come we can look at life. Them got eyes to knife, but someone and look at life. Them all of that, them let them whip them on them hook at life. Let them want them into God for heaven to look for Christ. While them a bow them and a verse them images. Rastafari keep yachting life privilege. He is the first of killing it. Why they give life privilege in all the villages to live? What? Searching to find love, no hurting, she needs my love. Searching ready anytime for divine love. I need all in my arms to charm and keep my warm. Oh, and I'll be flowing on and on from dusk till dawn. She's the one who keeps my home right through the storm. So be strong, do no wrong. I need her in my arms to hold. Just go on her when she's going. Be by your side, so brave and bold. Oh, I'll be in full eye charge. Lightning flash and thunder roll. Let's get close, now we got the time to show. Just in case you have never been told, you should know, girl, you're worth more than money and gold. I need her in my arms to charge and keep my warm. Oh, and I'll be flowing on and on from dusk to dawn.
Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. What does Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad? Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. The Lord, our God, the Lord is one. What does that really mean? And why is it important?
Baruch atah Adonai. Baruch haba Yerushalayim. Baruch atah Adonai.
ברוך הבא ירושלים. ברוך אתה אדוני Rastafari Adonai Adonai Rastafari.
Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, O children of Israel? Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians? Are ye not as children of the children of the Ethiopians? Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, saith the Lord.
Shabbat Shalom, Sembet Salam. Welcoming the Sabbath, Kabbalat Shabbat. The Friday evening prayer service. Here, even on the ear and in the eye for the TJIF. Thank JAH, Rastafari. It is Friday. The Friday evening prayer service has a character all its own. It is marked by aggregational singing and by a mood of joyous anticipation, expectation. The most striking difference in the contents of this service from that of all other nights of the week of the Shabuah of the Strong is the addition of a preliminary service called Kabbalat Shabbat, welcoming or receiving Kabbalat Shabbat, welcoming, receiving the Sabbath. This addition is said to be of a relatively recent origin. Some say that it was introduced by the Kabbalistic scholars of Safed during the middle of the 16th century, a very interesting period of time. We recognize what ethnic Yisrael and we, the Black Jews, Black and brown Yehudi, were going through circa 1492 and thereafter. So, if anything, this was something that the ethnic Yisrael, until other ones who say they were Jews came into, but all those things being as they be, let's move forward in the glory of His divine majesty. From there, it spread to Jewish, Judaic communities all over the world, gradually gaining acceptance as an integral part of the Friday evening service for the Kabbalat Shabbat. However popular it became, it is not considered obligatory. The non-obligatory status is still reflected in a practice followed in many congregations and many communities of conducting this part of the service from the bima, where where the Torah is read, and not from the podium or what is known as the amud, where prayers in the mikorab, the knesset, the synagogue, the gathering, the assembly are conducted. There are even communities where local traditions, they dictate that the prayer leader, the chosen, does not put on a talit for Kabbalat Shabbat. This, in effect, it stresses and emphasizes the same point. And if we may say, even here on the ear and in the irit for the TJIF, although many times we seek to at least go through the general order of the Kabbalat Shabbat, depends on the schedule and what it is that we have to bring forward in season and out of season, more or less of that particular order, especially with the Psalms. But here, the idiom, the Hebraic idiom Kabbalat Shabbat has two distinct connotations. One implies welcoming, the Kabbalat. The other implies acceptance. Now we see Afro-Semitically also the Kabbalah, receiving, the sense of receiving. In the halakhic literature, the halakha is like the trod, of how we walk this out, the trod halakha. It is the latter connotation that is dominant, the sense of acceptance. Just as on a fast day, one could, quote, accept, end quote, the fast earlier than the eye was set for its obligatory commencement by declaring it to be in effect for oneself from that moment on. So a person could declare, word, sound, and power, declare even before sundown that for him, Ha-Shabbat, the Sabbath, has begun. Any statement that takes note of the start of Ha-Shabbat, this constitutes its acceptance, its Kabbalat, its reception, its welcoming. This is the moment of Kabbalat Shabbat. That is what the sages, the Rebban, they meant by Kabbalat Shabbat when they use these words in ruling that the saying of Barku or Borku, bless y'all, Barku, Borku, at the start of the Ma'ariv, the evening service, constituted the precise moment when one accepted Ha-Shabbat, accepted the Sabbath, accepted the rest. From that moment on, all work was forbidden or verboten, even if the sun had not yet set. When it became customary to preface Ma'ariv, the evening service, with Psalm 92, a song for the Sabbath day is what is found in the superscription. A psalm, chant, a song, a shir for the Sabbath day. This became the moment of Kabbalat Shabbat. For the woman, for the daughters of Zion, the woman who lights the Shabbat candles, who lights the Shabbat lights. It is customary that act marks the acceptance of Ha-Shabbat. Ever since Kabbalat Shabbat became the title to a section of prayers that consists of songs and hymns welcoming Ha-Shabbat, welcoming the Sabbath, it is the connotation of welcome that has become the more established idea. The Kabbalat Shabbat service, it consists of three distinct components. Three distinct components. One, a series of 6 psalms for the 6 days of the week, beginning with Psalm 95 to Psalm 99 and Psalm 29, followed by a short mystical or Kabbalistic poem, the poem known as the Anna B'Koach. Secondarily, the hymn Lekah Dodi, come my friend, come my beloved, Lekah Dodi. Thirdly, Psalm 92, a psalm, a mizmor, a song, a shir for Yom HaShabbat, for the Sabbath day, and the Friday evening psalm, Psalm 93. Shabbat Shalom, 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 Shabbat Shalom.
Eloheinu, Eloheinu, Elohim, Eloheinu, Elohim, Apatajere, Elohim, Elohim,
Leave
Yes. Shabbat Shalom. Send that salam right there. Send that Leonate, a traditional Beta Israel Shabbat song right there. Praising Elohim, Eloheinu, I and I power, true good, true God. Shabbat Shalom. Send that salam. Thank Jah Rastafari. It is Friday here. The Rastafari Sabbatical Eve podcast right here. Just a note right here. We're in the 35th sabbatical study for this Shabbat strong. Naso take, or Naso et Rosh. When you lift up the head, take the psalm. Also today's daily psalm here, according to the royal order of the Ethiopian Hebrews, is Psalm 39. Psalm 39 right here. Now we also have this counting of the Omer here for the harvest season. We're at the 48th. Remember, we are commanded to count 7 Shabbats complete. Here we are fulfilling the 7th here for the TJIF, here the Friday Eve. The Friday would make the 48th day, the Shabbat day, the 49th day of 7 Sabbaths, 7 Shabuas, 7 Shabbats counting complete. And tomorrow after, looking forward to the first day here in the season, the reason for the season. But here, let's ride up with the Kabbalah, the Kabbalah from the Afro-Shemitic root means to receive. Kabbalah, Kabbalah, receiving, or in translation, receiving or welcoming Ha-Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, Semet Salam, Baraka right here, blessing, increase.
የሰማንን አወቅነው የዳሰሰንን አገኘነው የአብርሃምን አምላክ የሚያየንን ጌታ ኤልሮሂምን ኤልሮኢምን 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 ኤልሮኢምን
Right there is the excerpt. The children of Ethiopians, all you non-African children of Ethiopia, the male children of Israel, using the Hebrew Halakal, words of power right there. The Targum, the interpretation here.
Yemiyayinin ayino. Yesamanin awekno. Yedasisin agenyino. Ye Abrahamim Amlak Yemiyayinin Kieta Elohim. Yemiyayinin ayino. That which, or he who sees us, we have seen. Yemiyayinin ayino. Yesamanin awekno. He who we have heard, that which, or he who we have heard, awekno. We have known, we know, we have come to know the one which we heard. Yedasisin agenyano. He who we have touched, we have found. Agenyano. Yemiyayinin ayino. Yesamanin awekno. Yedasisin agenyano. Ye Abraham Amlak. The source, the power, the God, the source of Abraham. Yemiyayinin Geta. The one who sees us, who looks upon us, who beholds us, the Lord Adonai, Gieta, Yemiyayinin Gieta, Yemiyayinin Adonai, Elohim, the power, the source, the true God.
የሚያየንን አየነው፣ የሰማንን አወቅነው፣ የዳሰስንን አገኘነው፣ የአብርሃምን አምላክ የሚያየንን ጌታ ኤልሮኢምን 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 ኤልሮኢምን
Psalm 95. Oh, come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hand are the deep places of the earth. The strength of the hills is his also. The sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Nay, if you will hear his voice, harden not your heart as in the provocation, and as in the day of temptation in the wilderness. Your fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my work. 40 years long was I grieved with this generation, and said, it is a people that do err in their heart, and they have not known my ways. Unto whom I swear in my wrath, that they should not enter into my rest, my rest, my rest, my rest. Psalm 96. Oh, sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord, all the earth. Sing unto the Lord, bless his name. Show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the heathen, his wonders among all people. For the Lord is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols. The Lord made the heavens. Honor and majesty are before him. strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. Give unto the Lord, O ye kindreds of the people, give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. O worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Fear before him, all the earth. Say among the heathen that the Lord reigneth. The world also shall be established, that it shall not be moved. He shall judge the people righteously. Let the heavens rejoice, and let the earth be glad. Let the sea roar, and the fullness thereof. Let the fields be joyful, and all that is therein. Then shall all the trees of the wood rejoice before the Lord. For he cometh to judge the earth. He shall judge the world with righteousness, and the people with his truth, with his truth, with his truth, with his truth. Psalm 97. The Lord reigneth, let the earth rejoice, let the multitude of isles be glad thereof. Clouds and darkness are round about him, righteousness and judgment are the habitation of his throne. A fire goeth before him, and burneth up his enemies round about. His lightnings enlightened the world, the earth sore and trembled. The hills melted like wax at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the Lord of the whole earth. The heavens declare his righteousness, and all the people see his glory. Confounded be all they that serve graven images, that boast themselves of idols. Worship him, all ye gods. Zion heard and was glad, and the daughters of Judah rejoiced because of thy judgments, O Lord. For thou, Lord, art high above all the earth, thou art exalted far above all gods. Ye that love the Lord, hate evil. He preserveth the souls of his saints, he delivereth them out of the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, and gladness for the upright in heart. Rejoice in the Lord, ye righteous. Give thanks at the remembrance of his holiness, his holiness, his holiness, his holiness, his holiness. Psalm 98. O sing unto the Lord a new song, for he hath done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm hath gotten him the victory. The Lord hath made known his salvation. His righteousness hath he openly showed in the sight of the heathen. He hath remembered his mercy and his truth toward the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all the earth. Make a loud noise and rejoice and sing praise. Sing unto the Lord with the harp and the voice of a song. With trumpets and sound of cornet, make a joyful noise before the Lord the King. Let the sea roar and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Let the floods clap their hands. Let the hills be joyful together before the Lord. For he cometh to judge the earth. With righteousness shall he judge the world, and the people with equity, with equity, with equity, with equity. Psalm 99. The Lord reigneth, let the people tremble. He sitteth between the cherubims, let the earth be moved. The Lord is great in Zion, and he is high above all the people. Let them praise thy great and terrible name, for it is holy. The king's strength also loveth judgment. Thou dost establish equity. Thou executest judgment and righteousness in Jacob. Exalt ye the Lord our God, and worship at his footstool, for he is holy. Moses and Aaron among his priests, and Samuel among them that call upon his name, they called upon the Lord, and he answered them. He spake unto them in the cloudy pillar. They kept his testimonies, and the ordinance that he gave them. Thou answeredst them, O Lord our God. Thou wast a God that forgavest them, though thou tookest vengeance of their inventions. Exalt the Lord our God, and worship at his holy hill. For the Lord our God is holy. God is holy. God is holy. Psalm 49. Give unto the Lord, O ye mighty. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. The voice of the Lord is upon the waters. The God of glory thundereth. The Lord is upon many waters. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord is full of majesty. The voice of the Lord breaketh the cedars. Yea, the Lord breaketh the cedars of Lebanon. He maketh them also to skip like a calf. Lebanon and Syria like a young unicorn. The voice of the Lord divideth the flames of fire. The voice of the Lord shaketh the wilderness. The Lord shaketh the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord maketh the hinds to calve, and discovereth the forests. And his temple doth every one speak of his glory. The Lord sitteth upon the cloud. Yea, the Lord sitteth king forever. The Lord will give strength unto his people. The Lord will bless his people with people, with people, with people.
Jah loveth the gates of Zion more than all the dwellings of Jacob. Glorious things have been spoken of you, city of God. I'll make mention to Rahab and Babylon to them that know I. With the old Philistine Tyre, with Ethiopia, it shall be said that this man was born there. And the highest himself shall establish the earth. JAH Rastafari.
Kadamawi.
The whole place is due for help.
You name Jagat and is a rebel among men. He them no like the name. Yes, and you name Jagat and is a rebel among men. He them no like the name. For when I call him Rastafari, watch how we can tremble. He then no like the name. For when I call him Rastafari, watch how we can tremble. He then no like the name. I are the black Jews. And Israel King is Israel God. And upon the crucifixion tree there, where Jesus Christ is crucified, you see I-N-R-I, I-Negos, I-Negos, I-Negos.
Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto God. Sing unto God, ye kingdoms of the earth. Oh, sing praises unto the Lord. Selah.
Boy, everything takes time.
Ana Bekoach, we beg thee, Ana Bekoach. Gedulata Yaminaka Katir Sarura. With the strength and greatness of thy right arm. Gedulata Yaminaka Katir Sarura. Untangle our knotted fate. Kaver Arina Ta'amika. Accept your people's, I people's song. Kaver Arina Ta'amika. Sangaved, Kahreinu, Nora. Elevate and purify us. Sangaved, Kahre. Elevate and purify I and I. Nora. Awesome one, dreaded one, dreadful one, awesome one. Na Gibor, please, heroic one, mighty one. Na Gibor, Dorsheya Yehudeka. Those who pursue your uniqueness. Kubavata Shamre, guard them as the pupil of the eye. Kubavat Shamre. Barkem. Taharein, Racheme, Sidikateka, Tamida, Tamle. Bless them, purify them, pity, Barkeim, Tahrein, Racheme, Sidikateka, Tamida, Tamle. May your righteousness always reward them. Chasim Kadosh Berov Uvika. Powerful and holy and Isla one. In goodness, Nahela Idateka. In goodness, lead your flock. Yahida Ge'eh Le'ameka B'nei Zochreya Kedushateka. Unique and proud one. To your people turn. Zokre, those who remember Kedushateka, your holiness, your islandness, your set apartness. Shawatenu Kavel, accept our cries. Shawatenu Kavel, accept our cries. Ushma. And hear
our screams, accept our cries, our shout outs. Show Adenu, Kaviat Ushima, Ushaik Adenu, Yo Dea, Ta Elumot, O Noah of mysteries, of secrets, Yo Dea, Ta Elumot, Baruch Shem, Kovod Malkuto, Le'olam Oed. Blessed is the name of His Majesty, of His noble kingdom, for ever and ever.
Yeah, Rastafari live it. Last year I live it and reigns in the hearts of all man forever. JAH. JAH. JAH.
Send bet salam. Send bet salam. Send bet salam. Send bet salam. Sabbath peace. Sabbath safety. Send bet peace. Rest safely. Rest. The true rest and peace is in Christos and in Him. Salam.
לך דודי, לך דודי, לקראת הקלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Come, O friend, the bride to meet. Come, O friend, the Sabbath greet. לך דודי, לקראת הקלה, בני שבת נקבלה. To be repeated after each stanza. Leka dodi likarati akala b'nei shapati nekafala. Heat and remember were fused in one word when the voice divine, divine at Sinai was heard. Wa echad u'shmo echad wa he be Jehovah Yah Jaja echad u'shmo echad. Our Jehovah is one, and one is His name. Huwa Echad, Ushmo Echad, L'Shem U'L'Titareta V'Tehillah. In Him is our glory, in Him our fame, Ainai fame. Lekadodi Likrati Ekala, B'nei Shapati Nekavala. Oh, come, let us make Ainai meet the Queen of Days. The Sabbath Shabbat yields joy in all her ways. The last of Elohim's walk, but first in His design. The Sabbath Shabbat foreshadows blessing, baraka, divine. Blessings divine. Lekad dodi likrati ekala, b'nei Shabbati nekabala. Thou holy city, Isla city, thou shrine of Hamelech, of the king, of the Negus, even Negus Neges. Enough of thy grieving. Come now and sing. Yahuwah Jehovah will redeem thee. Lift up thy face. Yahuwah Jehovah will restore thee again to His grace. Shake off thy dust and arise from the mire. Come and bedeck thee in festive attire. Thy redemption is near, thy weeping let cease. Yahuwah Jehovah will fulfill thy yearnings for peace. Lecha dodi likrati ekala, b'nei Shabbati nekabala. Arise, oh arise, for come is thy light. The darkness is lifted, born is the night. Awake, awake, sing the song of the free. See all thy homeless returning to thee. Lecha dodi likrati ekala, b'nei Shabbati nekabala. Why art thou downcast? Why dost thou moan? Yahuwah Jehovah His glory upon thee has shown. Thy foes He vanquished, thy foes He vaunt, He humbled their pride. Elohayik, the Elohim has loved thee as bridegroom His bride. Lecha dodi likrati ekala, b'nei Shabbati nekabala. In freeness renewed again thou wilt thrive.
thy land will blossom, thy youth will revive. El Elohim, these we, I know, and ever acclaim, chanting our praises, Isis, to his holy, his Isla name. Lekatotia, likratia kalla, benesha patia nikapala. We, I greet thee, oh Sabbath, oh Shabbat, oh Sendatoy, crowned by Adonai, Jah, Rastafari. We, I hail thee, rejoicing in common accord. We, I are the faithful who bask in thy light. We, I welcome thy day. We, I welcome thy night. Lekadotia likratika la benesha patia nikabala. Come, O friend, the bride to meet. Come, O friend, the Sabbath, Shabbat, the Senbet, greet.
Shabbat Shalom. A song for the days already inside your home.
Rastafari is Almighty. Rastafari is Almighty. Rastafari is Almighty. Ever live and never paid full. Ever sure. Ever live and never paid full. Ever sure. Ever live and never paid full. Ever sure. I'm beast that made forward the lamb, and the lamb shall overcome them because he's king of things of country, land and tribe of Judah. I'm beast that made forward the lamb, and the lamb shall overcome them because he's king of things of country, land and tribe of Judah. I'm beast that made forward the lamb, and the lamb shall overcome them because he's king of things of country, land and tribe of Judah. Yeah, he's the only king of the Sabbath, and the Sabbath is our only future. Hey yo!
With Ethiopia, this man was born there, Babylon, to them that know me. Of Rahab and Babylon, Selah. I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to them that know me. Behold, Philistia and Tyre with Ethiopia. This man was born there, Selah. I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to them that know me. Behold, Philistia and Tyre with Ethiopia. This man was born there, Tyre with Ethiopia. This man was born there, with Ethiopia. This man was born there, with Ethiopia, 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 with Ethiopia. This man was born there. This man was born there. This man was born there. This man was born there.
So I, children, sing and praise thy power, even the first power of the Holy Trinity. The Maui, Haile Selassie. Man them ready, man them ready, man them ready. Haile Selassie.
Psalm 92, a chant for the congregation. Gratitude. 'Tis good to thank the mighty Jah, to chant thy name, O thou most high, I. To tell at morn thy love abroad, thy truth beneath the midnight sky, with 10-string lute and lyre so sweet, deep thoughtful chords, with harpings so sweet. For with thy work and high employ meet, thou cheerest me, Jehovah. I sing for joy. As flowering palm the just shall shew, as mountain cedar waving broad, set in Jehovah's own house they grow, in holiest precincts of I God. These in hoar age more fruit shall bear, forever glowing, green and fair, to shew how true Jehovah mine aid, how bright, how clear from evil shade.
Psalm 92. It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord, and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High, to show forth thy loving kindness in the morning, and thy faithfulness every night, upon an instrument of 10 strings, and upon the psaltery, upon the harp with a solemn sound. For thou, Lord, hast made me glad through thy work. I will triumph in the works of thy hands. O Lord, how great are thy works, and thy thoughts are very deep. A brutish man knoweth not, neither doth a fool understand this. When the wicked spring as the grass, and when all the workers of iniquity do flourish, it is that they shall be destroyed forever. But thou, Lord, art most high forevermore. For lo, thine enemies, O Lord, for lo, thine enemies shall perish. All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of an unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil. Mine eye also shall see my desire on mine enemies, and mine ears shall hear my desire of the wicked that rise up against me. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing, to show that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him.
I am that I am, mighty and thunderable, Xabir Masagan, Gramawi, Raspatar Madani, Alam, Tina Easterling, the Coast and the Gast, Side Tubga, Tubga, Tubga.
Psalm 93. The Lord reigneth, he is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed with strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. The world also is established, that it cannot be moved. Thy throne is established of old, thou art from everlasting. The floods have lifted up, O Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice, the floods lift up their waves. The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea. Thy testimonies are very sure. Holiness becometh thine house, O Lord, forever, 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 forever.
There was a great trembling, and the earth shook. The mountains fell with by the presence of the Most High, who lived and reigned and ruled. There's a sound in the air. I know the he that hath ears, let him hear what the Most High, our Elegy, has said this day. Proclaim it to those who would listen. There's a sound in the air. I don't hear. He that hath ears, let him hear this day what our Father, the Elegy, has said. Yeah. Oh, Lord.
My advice to all is to fulfill the 10 Commandments.
Rastafari. Oh, excellent is thy name, the one set thy glory above the heavens.
Yahweh El Shaddai. Wow. Wow. I'm grateful. The sun shines so rough. And your heart lift up his eyes and love. There is glory, and I can see your greatness in all things. Jah is the mightiest, none is mightier than Jah. Jah is the greatest, none is greater than Jah. Cannot be conquered, cannot be anchored, no. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah reign, Jah reign, Jah reign. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah live and live again. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah reign, Jah reign, Jah reign. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah live and live again. Wow. Down. Lean upon your own misunderstanding. Staying in your heart that Jah is dead. You must be messed up in your head. Whoa, over hills and valleys and plains, Jah reign, Jah reign, Jah reign. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah live and live again. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah reign, Jah reign, Jah reign. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah live and live again. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's all give thanks and praises. No matter what the stages, let's join hands and heart together and give thanks to the Creator, and all things will be better. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah reign, Jah reign, Jah reign. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah live and live again. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah reign, Jah reign, Jah reign. Over hills and valleys and plains, Jah live and live again. Yeah. Wow.
Yes, Jah reign, Jah reign. Yahweh reign, rules and reigns. Yes, I become king, even king of kings. Rod Zachariah right there with Jah reign, a compliment to the Friday evening Psalm 93. Before that, we had Psalm 92. Before that, we had the Lekad Dodi, welcoming the Shabbat. Welcoming the Shabbat as a bride. Yes, I, Rastafari. Before that, the Honor the Koah, Kabbalistic chant of the attributes of He who be, we be. And before that, the Kabbalah Shabbat Psalm 95 to Psalm 99 plus Psalm 29. And here, we have the virtuous woman, right, as is the tried tradition on the sabbatical sup, or the eve right here for the Friday, the eve of the Shabbat. Family come together to gather. The mind of the house right here, as a doctor would read the blessing and the lighting of the lights. The mind of the house at this particular point would read the virtuous woman, the Eshet Chayil, the Hebrew Eshet, or Set Eshet Chayil, woman of Chayil, of power, right here. So doctors, sons, here learn this here, Proverbs chapter 31. Verse 10 to verse 31. Here.
Who can find a virtuous woman? Who can find a virtuous woman? Who can find a virtuous woman? for her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field, and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She maketh fine linen, and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children arise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her. Praise her in the gates. The end of the Proverbs. Who can find a virtuous woman? Who can find a virtuous woman? Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. Who can find a virtuous woman?
Shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, shuba shuba, shuba 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 day, shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, yeah. Now, a real man can live without a woman. Like night to day, there's a woman to her man. She's essential to his purpose and his mission. A good woman is a glory to her man. She'll never take the power, still let's make him a better man. Every great man has a virtuous woman. Woman, you say you love me. You never leave me lonely, yeah. You always be there for me. The need not to worry, yeah. Woman, to keep my strong with the part of your plan. I'll leave my mom and dad, find a woman and be one. With a woman I make my bond, perfect combination. I am a black man, so I love me black woman. Woman, I give me this sweet, sweet love. Oh, any time of day, yeah, lots of kisses and hugs. Oh, I burn on nostalgia, yeah. No real man can live without a woman. That night to day, says a woman to her man. She's essential to his purpose and his mission. A good woman is a glory to her man. She'll never take the power, she'll make him a better man. Every great man has a virtuous woman. Woman I love and honor. The party of the life career, you're the Empress Omega. The mother Rastafari culture revises to the king and his empress Menin, who showed us the right and the true way of living. Woman could never cause sin, so listen as I sing. But the women of the earth, my joy bell ring, ring, ring. Equality in Zion, my nature's law, that's where he should go. For every man I know there is a woman. You meet the valley, that's all I know. Oh, yeah. Shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, shuba shuba, shuba 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 day, shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, shuba shuba day, shuba 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 day. Well, I say the family unit is fundamental and important, you know. The real man can't live without someone, you know. A person is going to write it, it's going to purify the man that I want, you know. There you go, you know, The real man can live without the woman. Like night to day, says a woman to her man. She's essential to his purpose and his mission. A good woman is a glory to her man. Woman, you say you love me. You never leave me lonely. Yeah. You always be there for me. So need not to worry. Yeah. Woman to keep my strong, which is part of your plan. I leave my mom and dad, find a woman and be one. With a woman I make my bond, perfect combination. I am a black man, so I love me black woman. Woman I give me this sweet, sweet love. Oh, any time of day, yeah, lots of kisses and hugs. Rasta man I burn out all, yeah. No real man can live without the woman. Like night to day, says a woman to her man.
Yes. Virtuous woman, right there. Warrior King. And before that, from the Proverbs chapter 31, verses 10 to 31. What a liberated woman right there. That's the idea right there. Just to point that out as a kind of a balance right here to going through this Torah reading and feeding. There's certain aspects of it we really need to get into the study and put it into context. Now, one thing we were just going over right here, right, before even bringing forward the synopsis for this 35th sabbatical study, lift up. And literally in the Hebrew, it's lift up, naso. The 35th sabbatical degree of I&I studies, naso. The full is naso et rosh. Naso, lift up at the object marker for the verb, naso, et, lift up what? Et rosh, the head. Here we have a census, here we have a count. So let's go through an overview. Give thanks. Chaver Shali, yes, I. We're just asking whether our earlier, word sound was actually heard. So here we pick up with a synopsis here for this sabbatical study. Synopsis for this 35th, naso. KJV has take. Bringing out the sense of it. Directly in the Hebrew is lift up the head. So the phrase of lifting up the head is to say, like, take the head count. It's a census here. So in the previous sabbatical study, at the 34th degree of I&I sabbatical study, Torah portion, we had Bamidbar. Here, the second reading here in the fourth book of Moshe, called the book of Numbers. In the Hebrew, it's known as Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. So previously, the previous Torah portion was the same name as the book in the Hebrew, Bamidbar, in the wilderness. It counted the three clans. The three clans are in the Hebrew, the mispachot, singular mispacha, or you might hear it as mispaka. Mispaka is family, but family in the sense of the family circle. The direct nuclear part of the family is the Beit Ab, the Beit, house of the Ab, house of the father. So previously, Bamidbar, previous sabbatical study, had accounted the three clans, the three family circles, the clans of the tribe of Lewi, that would assist HaKohanim, that would assist the priests. So this principle here, all of the priests, according to HaTorah here, all of the priests are Levites, but not all of the Levites, Ha-Lewim, the Levites are Ha-Kohanim, are priests. So here we have the counting of the three clans of the tribe of Levi, that would assist the priests to perform the work of Ha-Mishkan. The Mishkan is tabernacle, from the Hebrew shakan, to tabernacle, to dwell, the Mishkan, Ha-Mishkan, the tabernacle. Now, of the three clans, we have the Kohathites. Kohat, from Kohat, the Kohatites, or the Kohati, right? They were given preeminence and prominence of place in their service. Why? Both because they were responsible for carrying the most sacred objects of Ha-Mishkan. And also because Aharon Banayo, Aaron and Banaim, his sons, who are, in the context here, Ha-Kohanim. let's note that Aaron and his sons, here we have at this point only the two sons of Aharon, Eleazar and Yitamar. As we know previously, even in Vayikra, Leviticus, Nadab and Abihu had got a burn notice because they had offered strange fire. So here we have Aharon, the Hebrew Christ, or the Hebrew Moshiach, the Hebrew anointed, and his sons, also the anointed. We emphasize that because to get the true Hebrew context, when we get into the Brit Hadasha, we can see the correspondence. So because Aaron and his sons, the priests, were the leaders, they were the leaders of that particular clan. So the reason why the Kohathites of the three clans, the three family circles, Mispahot of the Levites were given prominence is because they were responsible for carrying the most sacred objects. You can say the Holy of Holy, the Holy and the Holy of Holy objects of the tabernacle. And because Aharon and his sons, they were the leaders, the Roshim, the Rases, the Rosh. Rosh is head in the Hebrew as Ras in the Amharic, Re'is in the Ge'is. So you can see the similarity to the Afro-Shemitic. They were the leaders of that clan. Now, in order to serve, however, a Lewi, a Levite, was required to be between the ages of 30 and 50 again, in order to serve. So we have actually two camps to say, in a sense, not two camps, so how we put it into context, we have two hosts, the word Seba, or in the plural, Sebaot, as we have Yahweh Sebaot, often translated as Jehovah of armies, also translated as Jehovah of hosts. One, we have the rank and file Israelites, right, of the 12 tribes. And here we have the Levites. The Levites, they're a separate service. So we know that for previously in Bamidbar, we get a count, right, of the army. So that's one service in the military, in the army. And the count there was from 20 years old and upward. But remember that the Levites were outside of that count. They were separate, right? So here we learn that in order to serve, a Levite was required to be between the ages of 30 and 50. For the rank and file Israelites from the 12 tribes to serve in the army, one had to be 20 years above. But to be a Levite, right, or to serve, for a Levite to serve, was required to be between 30 and 50. And an additional census or count was taken that listed 2,750 50 Kohathites. Once again, additional census that was taken, it listed 2,750 Kohathites. Now the Kohathites, Kohatim, they were the tribe of Aaron and his sons, and they were the ones who in their service would carry the holy things. So there was a list of 2,750 of them. They all were eligible for service. So we have like the armed services, and then we could say the holy services and the sanctuary. Now here, in this sabbatical study for this Shabbat strong here, as we complete the 7 Shabbats count from the Korim, first fruits, that corresponds in the Old Testament or in the Hebrew scriptures in HaTorah, right? We have that right there with the 50 days from the Exodus to reaching Har Sinai. So in the Old Covenant or Old Testament view, the significance of Shabuot called Shavuot by other Jews, we say Shabuot, right? We have weeks. So a Shabua is a week. A week, in other words, from the first day, Ehud, that's called Sunday, to the 7th day, Shabbat day. So here, we have in the New Covenant sense, the resurrection of Yeshua HaMoshiach corresponded at that time in that year, one time for all time, corresponded with the Bikurim. That's where the first fruits are offered. So as we have in the New Covenant scriptures, the Brit Hadasha with Yeshua HaMoshiach, Yeshua HaNotri being the first fruits, right? And then the brothers who rise up, right, afterward, being those who are like the harvest. So what we have here in the New Covenant sense is a time between the resurrection of Yeshua HaMoshiach, right, and that giving of the Ruach HaKadosh, the Holy Spirit, in the upper room of Zion. This also brings out again one of the themes. We no longer come to Mount Sinai, but we now come to Har Zion, to Mount Zion. So from the old covenant sense, the Exodus, 50 days after that, they reach Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, we can say, is the beginning of that birth of the nation, with the giving of the Constitution, as it was, the 10 words, the Eseret HaDebarim, the 10 words, the 10 commandments to call Beta Yisrael, to all of the house of Israel. In the New Covenant sense, the resurrection of Moshiach, corresponding even to that Exodus, that point of Exodus, and 50 days later, or 2 sevens, 7 times 7, 7 Shabbats, plus the morrow after. So that's the 50 days, the Pentecost sense. But here. In this sabbatical study, this Torah reading and feeding, we're still in the synopsis here, getting an overview. This Torah reading and feeding, picking up with Numbers chapter 4 at verse 21 to Numbers chapter 7, verse 89. And a little note, this is said to be one of the longest, as per verses, the longest Torah readings and feeding. So this Torah reading and feeding here, this sabbatical manna, angel's bread, it begins with Hailahim, the power, Yahweh, Jehovah, telling Moses, to likewise, in the same wise, likewise count all qualified males of the other 2 clans. So we had left off previously with the count of the Kohathites, right? And now JAH is giving Moses the instruction to count all the qualified males of the 2 other clans, the 2 other family circles of the Levites, namely the Gershonites and the Merarites, who would be responsible for maintaining and moving the tabernacle, HaMishkan, the tabernacle structure, during the desert, during the wilderness trod, during the desert journey. Now, the additional census or head count, it revealed that there were 2,630 men of Gershon who would care for the woven materials of the tabernacle, namely the curtains, the roof coverings, the wall hangings, and 3,200 of the Merarites of Merari, who would care for the wooden framework, as well as the courtyard posts and the courtyard sockets. In total, there were 8,580 Lewim or Levites who were under the direct supervision of Aaron's son, Ithamar or Ithamar. Now, Moshe then instructed the Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, the children of Israel, the Israelites, to remove all those who were ritually unclean or unhygienic, so to speak, from the camp. These included all who were afflicted with tzara'at. Tzara'at, in strong quotes, is often referred to as leprosy, but a more better study will bring out skin disease. All who had an issue in the Hebrew, the zab. Zab in ancient Hebrew, modern Hebrew, they say zav. All who have an issue. And those who were defiled by contact with a corpse, with a dead body. Once again, those who were to be removed from the camp. They were not to be in the camp, but like outside the camp. These included all those who were afflicted with skin disease or tzara'at, and all those who had an issue. Azab gives a whole new context to, like, somebody say, yeah, so-and-so got an issue. All those who had an issue, and those who were defiled by contact with the corpse. In addition, the people were commanded to confess their chet, their missing the mark, their sin, their lack, their forfeiture, their fuckery, and to make restitution to those they had harmed, and make guilt offerings. This is a synopsis here, but just to add a little more light, when it says to make restitution to those they had harmed, we're not just speaking like many of the Gentiles and, counterfeit Christianity or others, they would think that this is like a spiritual thing. No, but it also speaks about one of the areas the law covering the 9 areas of people activity, speaking about business. So if one had defrauded their brethren or one in business, this was also a sin, a chet, a hatiyat, missing the mark, of fuckery. So they had to make restitution to those they had harmed. So it's not just like you beat somebody up or you say something. No, but if you do bad business or you flim-flam, right? And also make guilt offerings. Now the parsha here, 35th degree for this Shabbat Nassau, it continues with a special Torah, a special direction instruction of the Torah, the direction instructions. This is concerning a, quote, suspected wife, end quote. Or in the Hebrew, this is known as a sotah. Sotah means like to go astray, right? One who goes astray, who could be tested for infidelity by a ritual, a rite and a ritual revealed here that involved drinking a goblet of water, specially prepared by a Kohen, a priest, and saying Amen to a curse or a consequence up on her if she really was guilty of adultery. Now, this is followed. Let's pause here before we go into what is followed by, because we've heard a lot of ones reasoning on this right here, and I thought it was interesting to put things into context. Right here, before I just looked up, you could Google this. It's ancient laws of infidelity. Now, the first one that pops up is the Hebrew laws, and it says right here, just to share right here, Line of Judah society, we're intelligence service. But the first thing we have to do is take the info, right, and take out the disinfo and make some intel out of it. This is an example here of what we're talking about. Here, we looked up ancient laws of infidelity. Ancient laws of infidelity. First thing that comes up, where Google will hedge up something and put it at the top, is Hebrew laws. And it says here, man that committed adultery with another man's wife, even he that committed adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. A little commentary here. This is why Robenu, Einai Rabbi, the Rabbi, Yeshua HaMoshiach in the Brit Chadasha. When they brought the woman, remember when they brought the woman, you heard about it, or you recall, they brought the woman that was caught in the act. Wow, she was caught in the act. Yeah, of adultery. It seems like adultery is a crime for two. Note that they only brought the woman. This is why Robenu Yeshua HaMoshiach dismissed that, right? And he gave the woman a warning. Right? You know what I mean? He knew there was something going on, but they had malpractice. Like in law, it was malpractice. It's brought the woman, but they caught the woman in the act of herself. If it was herself, it wouldn't be adultery. But anyway, but here it says the Old Testament, and this is outside of the quote, they say the Old Testament records that an adulteress was put to death by burning. Can you show me a scripture? Can you give me a citation? Yes, we know what Yehuda said. You know what Judah said, right? At that time that Judah said this before Moshe's law and everything. But if one can show me actually where it says this, it doesn't really say that unless somebody can show me. Chabarim, I might be wrong on this, iron sharpen iron. But they gave a direct quote from the scripture. This comes from a site called, what's this, He-In online. I don't know, He-In online. HEINONLINE.org. Right? They have a PDF here. The document is called Ancient Laws of Adultery, a synopsis. Probably later on we'll download it. But we wanted to compare and contrast because we said earlier in the Shabua that this right here was very interesting. We read it today and we say, what? So if a man got jealous and the law of jealousy or zealousy, and he thought his wife was committing adultery, he would take the woman to the priest and she would have to go through this rite and ritual, drink this water, say amen, and so forth and so on. And this might happen or that might happen to her. But let's put it into context, because we have evolved from that particular psycho-spiritually from that time. But back at that time, back in them days, you know how we say today is not like the previous days. We say, you know, these are different time. Like, this is not the 60s, this is not the 50s, not the 40s, it's not 1865, it's not 1776, it's not none of that. See, some people are like kind of lost, you know, in time and everything. We got to put things in its context. So I scroll down the page, just a highlight here, right? And down here it says adultery laws is a Wikipedia page. There's an interesting page on adultery in classical Athens, for example, right? And it said here, famously, Athenian culture and adultery laws consider seduction of a citizen woman a worse crime than rape. That's interesting. So if you seduce a woman who was a part of the Greek, like, as a citizen, then they will punish you with worse. It'd be worse than if you raped, so-called, her, right? But be that as it may, right there, there's another article here. Might want to download this into PDF. Yeah, it's on jstour.org. Adultery in Ancient Near Eastern Law. I'm mentioning this because one will say, oh, look at that Bible, the Bible. But what you don't recognize because of Stockholm Syndrome, white supremacist Stockholm Syndrome, what you don't recognize is that before this regulation was revealed, right? Like before Torah was revealed to the Bnei Yisrael, every firstborn son was able to be the priest of his household and his family. He can go forth, he can give an offering, he would be the priest of his family. But once they had come into the covenant, right, things changed. Once they came into the covenant and actually had broke it with the molten calf, the Egel Masika, right, falsely called the golden calf, they had lost because they broke their word. So the covenant was broken by the Israelites, and we had a renewing of the covenant. So we had actually the new covenant in the old covenant. I'm pointing this out because we have to put things into context. Before HaTorah was revealed, if a man suspected that his wife committed adultery back in them days, I'm not talking about today, I'm talking about back in them days, right? To see where the good, the holy, the beneficial of Torah was, the man could act without, you know, any witnesses. He could act. You know, they call it, even today, there's something that they call, what they call it? A crime of passion. So as we study this right here, what we have found in I sabbatical study, right, as we study it, not just get a selected verse and then pour all your ignorance into a verse, but actually look at it into fuller context, is that what JAH was doing was regulating them, catching them where they were and regulating them to something better. So right here, what we have in this the Sota law, the suspected wife law, was a regulating of the mandem. Think about it for a moment. As we look at other cultures, man, have you read what other cultures say concerning if a husband suspected his wife of, suspected, doesn't mean that she did. And this is a beautiful thing about the Torah and the instruction here if we read it in the full of full, right? It basically says that if he suspected, there's a case that he might be right. There's a case he might be just jealous. He might have told his wife, hey, don't speak to that brethren over there. And then he see his wife speaking to her and say, they're doing something. And then he kill, right? Kill her, kill him. He just do whatever. He's upset. He's angry, suspicious. But now he has to actually, if he's Torah observant and if he's in good standing in the covenant, he actually has to go through this regulation here and before he even acts. So in a sense, the wild, you can say, nature of things since the fall is gradually being regulated here. That's why we have the Brit Chadasha, even renewed, as we have, when I say evolved, I'm not saying from so-called monkey to man evolved. I'm saying evolved from a low degree of consciousness to a slightly higher degree of consciousness. So I pointed out right there, we're getting into some more of the details because in looking at some things right here, it was interesting because here on the Romans had a law that says he may kill his daughter at once. What? Right? This must be understood to mean that having today killed the adulterer, he cannot reserve his daughter. So in other words, if a man had a daughter and his daughter, like his child, right, somehow did something, commit adultery, he might kill the man. But if he did, according to their law, he had to kill you know, he killed a woman, he has to kill the man. I pointed this out because one has to look at the context of the time. We read in, I think, Assyrian and other nations, as we did a little study on this, we said, Chan, it was brutal. In one case, it said that if a woman was suspected of committing adultery or something like that, it was almost like throw her in the water, almost. And if she floats, then she didn't do it. If she sinks, then she did it. I said, what? Just pointing this out, right here, just for a reason. So, yes, this is not necessarily in the new covenant the way we operate, but we must learn the wisdom of this. It basically means that even if he suspected it, right, he should try to investigate it, and he should not act off his feelings and his emotion. Because as we read it, there's a case where she did not do it. So imagine she didn't do it, but he suspected because he told her, don't speak to that man or don't speak to that brother. He see her speaking to that brother, and so he said, oh, she must be such and such. He killed her. Then he found out you know what I mean? But then if he did that, then no doubt they found out that, you know, he killed our sister and she didn't do anything. Well, in the community, you see, this Torah is a community thing. You know, we're learning this in the wilderness, but we have to come to community, because one thing about this is that we're reading this and studying this here, and a lot of ones are thinking that, oh, because they read this here, they can act off of this. No, that's not how to operate it. It's a community, right? It's a community. We still are scattered. This is for a community. So it operates different in community. There are principles that even though we're not in community, there are precepts and principles, righteous precepts and principles, but there are certain things that require the community. But just to point that out right there, concerning the suspected wife, right, how it regulated what amongst many other nations was something that was just assumed to be the right of a man. There's something that was assumed to be right, because they live in I'm not going to say a realer world, but a world that had less checks and balances. So this is a check and balance. But after that this is the part that we like to unpack right here. Let me ask a question before we go into this synopsis. Was Yeshua, right, Jesus, a.k.a., quote, Jesus, end quote, according to the translator and the way they taught you to speak it. I don't know where the Z come in Jesus. I don't know where the Z is at. But anyway, was he a Nazarite, do you think? Or was he a Nazarene? Follow-up question. Is a Nazarene a Nazarite? Our answer is, to the second question, a Nazarene is not a Nazarite. But after the sota, the suspected wife, and the law concerning jealousies or zealousy, this is followed by the law of the Nazir, or someone, could be a man or a woman. So here's an equal opportunity to be set apart for a man or a woman. So in the scripts, it's not sexist as these tax and spend godless liberals, you know, make believe today. And a lot of our people, unfortunately, don't study for themselves. This is followed by the law of the Nazir. Nazir in the Hebrew means like crown, or someone, male or female, who makes a special vow of consecration for a specific period of time. This is what is called the Nazirite vow. In KJV, I think you say Nazarite, but actually it's more correctly Nazirite. During the time of separation, the Nazirite must abstain from consuming any alcohol or grape products, give up cutting their hair, and not come near a corpse or a dead body. Let's make a note here. People say, well, normally you won't come near a corpse or a dead body. Well, let's understand in the ancient world, they did not have, like we have today, undertakers. You know, they didn't have, well, let me say it again. For the Israelites, we didn't have institutions of this, and many nations didn't really have institution of this. The ancient Egyptians, well, that's something different. You know, they actually did have an institution of it. So where the family, most likely, if he was in the cities in ancient Kemet, you know, they had institutions that would, you know, take care of that for the right fee, like today. But in the ancient times, if your relative, family member, so forth and so on, had passed away or died, it was the responsibility of members of the family or the near of kin to prepare the body and go through all the rites and rituals. Just to put it into context, it wasn't saying like, well, you walk down the street or you walk down the road and over there there's a dead animal or something and you don't really touch it or whatever, but it doesn't mean like that you've been defiled. But it means that you might have to, do your duty, right? If it's your near of kin, mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter, or wife, or, someone near to you. And therefore that would effectively end that separation. And then one can always do a reboot and start again. At the end of the vow period, the Nazarite, so if a Nazarite wants to actually to separate for the next year until the next harvest next year, it'll be from this time to that time. So at the end of the vow period, a vow is a votive offering. Votive means will. That means you express by word, sound, and power what you will do. Right. So at the end of that vow period, at the end of the period of time that you have done what your word, sound, and power said you would do, the Nazarite was required to give offering at the Mishkan, at the tabernacle. Now, Elohim then tells Moshe to teach Aharon Ubanayo, Aaron and his sons, a special threefold baraka, a special threefold blessing, a special threefold word, sound, and power of increase, of prosperity and peace, known as the priestly blessing, to use when they bless Amo Yisrael, when they bless your people, when they bless the people of Yisrael. Now, the Parasha, the manna here, the angel's bread right here, this Torah reading and feeding, it fulfills an angel for a list of gifts given by the leaders, by the princes, the Nasim, the princes, the leaders, the heads, the Rases of the 12 tribes at the initiation, the starting, the beginning of the altar. So when they initiated the Mizbeach, the altar at the tabernacle, each of the 12 tribe princes, they gave an offering. Now, this initiation, or in the KJV, it says dedication, is called the Hanukkah. The Hanukkah, here we get the root idea of Hanukkah. And it's from here that we get the readings as well during the Maccabee fighting holiday of Hanukkah, the holiday where we resist assimilation to the world, flesh, the satanic Greco-Roman system of things. This is where we get the link for Hanukkah, where they had to reinitiate, restart, clean, cleanse, purify the temple after what had occurred during the time of the Seleucids, the Greeks, the Grecos, back in them times, the Maccabee. And that comes in between Malachi and Matthew. So if you have a Bible and you go to Malachi, after that, you should be able to find Maccabee. If you don't find Maccabee, that means that you don't have the full script right there. So we will advise ones and ones, certain documents like the 1611, 1611 Bible, the actual 1611 Bible, right? Or one can buy or purchase an Apocrypha with the 15 or so books, right? Because it's very important. It goes between, it helps to bridge the gap between what's called the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. So here, brothers and sisters and brothers, here just giving an overview right here as we're moving forward to the 49th day, right here in the season, fulfilling the 7 Sabbaths that we are commanded to count complete until the harvest. And here, the two sevens clash.
and old prophet Marcus Garvey, prophet I say. Then Jacob, then a Vigo, and Kingston is gonna meet. And I can see with my own eyes, it's only a thousand dreams that divide. What I live on my head. When the two sevens flash the dread. What I live on my head. When the two sevens flash. Look up a cotton tree outside the police station. How beautiful it used to be. And it has been destroyed by lightning, earthquake and thunder. I say, what? What I live on my head. When it do seven flash, it red. What I live on my head. When it do seven flash. I take a ride sometimes on Ken Overland and Bronx. And sometimes I ride on bus X82. Say what? What I live on my head. When it do seven flash. What I live on my head. When it do seven flash. Marcus Garvey was inside us, Spanish down the street prison. And when they were about to take him out, the prophesied and said, "Thy pass through the gate, no other prisoner shall enter it there through." And so it is until now. The gate is being locked. Say what? What I live on my head. When it do seven flash, it's red. What I live on my head. When it do seven flash, bita, what I live on my head. When it do seven flash, a man I go feel it. What I live on my head. When it do seven flash, you better
live on Bombay. What a leaving Bombay. When the 2-7s. Hail up, Dr. Palmer. Just looking at the group right here, you know, got a juggle here behind the scenes, but just hail up to the brothers and sisters. Shabbat Shalom. Hail up, Ras Melchizedek. Yes, where can you find this track? Chan, okay, we have to listen to the replay around 11:02. Kedar Avdi. He asked an interesting question. He said, what if you're bald? I guess it's concerning Nazir, the Nazarite. What if you're bald and you want to vow the vow of a Nazarite? That's interesting. Going to take that up in consultation. I'm a head rest on that one right there. That's an interesting one. Don't want to just speak just off the cuff, you know, like extemporaneously. But what if you're bald and you want to vow the vow of a Nazarite? That is very, very interesting. You mean bald? I got to ask, like, bald? You mean like bald, like maybe receding hairline or something like that, or a little bald over here, bald over there, no hair whatsoever? That is interesting. I think one also, when we study vows, one can still vow. All right, one can still make a vow, even a vow to separate. But as far as the Nazir, because if we are correct on this, as we mentioned, I always like to just check it out right here. Brothers and sisters and brothers, we still have today's daily psalm, but it's here in the catch-up reasonment here, both with the harvest feast here, on the reason on the harvest. How do we observe the harvest in the new covenant sense? How we observe the harvest in the new covenant sense, right? Here. So the Nazir, the H5139, according to the Strong's Concordance, Nazir, right? Nazir, consecrated, devoted one. Okay, let's get to the very root. Separate, separate, that is consecrated as a prince, a Nazirite. Right? Let's go to the 5144. The 5144 is the root. So we have Nazir, coming from the root, the Hebrew root, Nazar. So the root is Nazar, right? And as a verb, we're looking at the verb. And then as a noun, we have Nazir, or Nazir. Now here they have BDB, Brown's Drivers Briggs definition to dedicate, consecrate, separate. The main word right there, sense, is separate, to keep one separate, right? Separate. So here, to hold aloof, to abstain, to set apart. So one can still be set apart, but since the Nazir, right, as we have right here, the Nazir, there's one other word that we had mentioned. I know that came up in the previous Torah portion, but one can still vow, like in the vows, when it says when a man make a vow is just a vow, right? The vow is basically the word, right, expressing what you will do. Like, oh, JAH, if you will get me through this right here, I will offer this. If you will increase my farm, I will do such and such. And increase your farm, you are to do such and such. Oh, JAH, I will separate myself from this and this and this. One can still vow to be separate from those things. But as far as the kind of the Nazirite right here, the terms and conditions, right? The terms and conditions specifically point out, right? The terms and conditions specifically point out the growing of the hair, right there. So if one is bald, they can still vow to be separate, but good question. I really like the question right there. Good question right there. I want to touch on Joseph here because it says that he was separate from his brethren, right? Remember Joseph that shaved his head. Remember Joseph basically walked like a Kemetic, he walked like an Egyptian, he walked, talked, he acted like he became nationalized, when we read in the scripture that says that Joseph, how he shaved his face, he shaved his hair, he shaved him, he basically took on the Egyptian, we would say mores, just like when somebody come from, other countries and they put on jeans and sports hats and all that kind of stuff, and listen to hip hop, they become, quote, American, you know what I'm saying? But here concerning Joseph, right, it says something here, Joseph, it says, he who was separate from his brothers. You want to find this part just to bring out a point concerning the Nazir, right, the Nazirite. Okay, here we go. It's in Genesis chapter 49. It's the Baraka. It's the blessing of Jacob, right? The blessing of Jacob. Some might call it the deathbed blessing, but the blessing of Jacob to his sons, to the Bnei Yaakov, to the sons of Jacob, who would be known as the Bnei Yisrael.
Hearken to the words of Jacob. These are the words of our Father.
Here. So we have Genesis chapter 49, verse 26. It says the blessings, the KJV version here, basic Peshat, plain version, low degree to high degree. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. All right, so we have Genesis chapter 49, verse 26. Once again, this is a really, really good and really interesting question right here. Once again, Kedar Abdi asks, what if you're bald and you want to vow the vow of a Nazirite? I would say if you're bald, according to the terms and conditions, according to Torah, what is written, you can still vow a vow to be separate. But as far as calling it the vow of the Nazirite probably won't, really apply there concerning the hair part. But the interest in that particular question, the small, still voice spoke and we heard, and remember that Joseph had shaved himself. Remember? Joseph has shaved himself. But here the patriarch Yaakov, right, is now blessing his sons. And here he says, the blessings of thy father, speaking to Joseph. It's the final part of this verse right here where it says, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate. Look up the word separate there. The word separate there is the H5139. It's the word Nazir. We have the word Nazir. So let's see if we can understand this right here. So Nazir actually means to be separate. So the here aspect right there is interesting. But one, according to Joseph's example, seeing that Joseph in Egypt, to kind of conform, not to stand out so much, as a Hebrew, as one to the Egyptians was more uncivilized, he basically shaved his face, no doubt shaved his hair, bald his hair, his head, but still he was separate. This is why his brothers didn't know him, because, their woolly hair and their beards, they look like Hebrew. They look like a Apiru, right? They look like a Hebrew, but they thought that this man here, Haish, she's the Egyptian, this man here, who's the ruler of Egypt or underneath the ruler of Egypt. But Joseph, according to the word of the father, the blessing of the father, he was Nazir. He was Nazir from his brethren. So it's possible for one to still be Nazir, right? Nazir, that is to say, separate. Here in the Hebrew right here, it says, Berkot Abika. Berkot Abika, the blessing of thy father. Berkot Abika. Gabrua ala Berkota Horai Ad Kaiwat Gibaota Olam Tehiyayen Le Rosh, for the head, Le Rosh, Yosef, for the head of Yosef, the head of Joseph, or Le Kadkod, the crown or the top, or Le Kadkod. The Kadkod is like the crown of the head. It would be like the top of the head, almost like where some ones wear the mulkas, the yarmulkes, right on the top. Where some say there's that, the top of the head. It says here, Le Kadkod Nazir, Le Kadkod Nazir, Ahayo, his brothers. So here we have Joseph as a Nazir. So it's possible for one to still be separate. So the main idea of Nazirite is a separate aspect. That here becomes, an aspect of, of this here, but still the principle of being separate. Hold on for a moment. Let me see if we have this right here. Looking at the time, he got 2 minutes. Want to ride up with this today's daily psalm right here. But we want to just see whether it says that, yeah, boom, here it goes. Genesis 41:14. Mirror Numbers 41:14. It says, the Paro, the great house, sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved. Right? Italicized, it says himself, but the italicized words in the KJV are not there in the Hebrew and the original scriptures. So the sense is that he shaved and changed his raiment and came into Paro and came into Pharaoh. So, yeah, so Joseph was Nazir. Here, brothers and sisters and brothers, going to write up today's daily psalm, but give thanks for the question. Still going to head rest it and listen to the small, still voice. And if there's more, right, that John reveals, we can share and we will share. But right here, speaking of the Nazarene, something that Tony Rebel has this tune right here. It's called the Nazarene vow. That's I-9 vow, the Nazarene vow. But what about the Nazarene? Yeah. Stay tuned.
Burning to the dust the ground. I come to utter some conscious sound. Don't be afraid, don't you dare touch all the ground. Remember your answer and the
Nazarene vow. Interesting right there. Let's kind of push this. We're going to push this up along the basic questions here. We have basic questions and we have advanced questions here for this 35th degree Vinine sabbatical studies, as well as some discussion topics as well. Right. Also touch on the priestly blessing as well. But here, let's push this question up to the top right here. And it's question 11 on the basic questions right here. What is a Nazarite vow? Question and answer, basic question. What is a Nazarite vow? More better spelled in the English, Nazirite. Sometimes we see it as Nazarite, but more better in the English because it's Nazir. If you read if you see the Hebrew, it's Nun Zayin Yod Resh. That's N-Z-Y-R. So it's Nazir. It's not just a non Zayin Resh, which could be Nazar, but with the Yod there is the E sound. We have the E sound, Nazir. So anyway, what is a Nazarite vow? It's a voluntary vow. What is a vow in Hebrew? Neder. A neder is a vow, right? A votive offering, right? Words, sound, power. Words right in thy mouth, meditation right in thy heart, be accepted in thy sight. Neder, that requires consecration, separation, setting apart, right? For a specific or specified season, a specified period of time. The nature of the vow, right? The nature of the vow is not described. It's a voluntary vow, right? For a specific season. The nature of the vow is not described. Next question right here, question 12 right here. From what were Nazarites to abstain during the time of their vow? From what were Nazarites? Now, here's an interesting thing. Many of I and I is Rastafari, especially in the earlier years for many of I and I, when we read certain things, at that stage, we wasn't really on the diligent study, but, like most ones to read a verse and, go figure and everything. The way Numbers chapter 6 reads, some of the elders, God bless their souls, some of them have gone on to glory, but still there are some who believe from everything that grows on the vine. So some and some ones would not eat anything that grows on the vine, according to the interpretation that, yes, Einai Locks is the Nazirite. We say there's a likeness there, but we're in the Brit Hadasha. It's about the King of Kings, right, and his Christ, about the teaching of his majesty. This is why when I hear the tune by Tony Rebel, I say, interesting. He said Nazarene. He says Nazarene vow. One might say it's a mistake, but I see that a mystic in it. Not a mistake. There's a mystic value in that right there, right? But some ones had believed by poor maybe understanding of the script that it meant to, abstain from everything of the vine. And it's recorded that some of the elders from such a time did have that interpretation. But specifically, it's abstention from wine and fermented drink, vinegar, all great products, cutting their hair, and coming near a dead body or a corpse. Once again, according to what is written, right, it was abstention from wine and fermented drink, vinegar, all great products. That's what it's talking about, the grape, all that grows on the vine. So when some read that part in Numbers chapter 6, right, even I at one time, I thought so. And, as we kept studying and growing, we recognized, the whole context. Well, actually, as we got into the language, I think it was reading His Majesty's Bible, the Amharic, and also referencing the Hebrew, we got to recognize by the language of the language, right, getting past the KJV ambiguity. The KJV ambiguity, I like that. The KJV ambiguity, getting past that, we got to recognize it was specifically speaking of the grape. Of everything that grows of the vine, speaking of the grapevine, right? So this is specifically concerning all great products, cutting their hair, and coming near a dead body. I think the significant thing about the Nazarite vow, especially for I and I as Rastafari, let's recognize that the first Rastafari, right, they were combed some. They call them comb some. They should, comb their hair, have maybe short crop like black man, would have, back in them days. Many of them were clean faced too. There was even a spiritual evolution, as it were, because the first proclaimers of Rastafari among our people from we could say from Ethiopia, from east of the River Nile, right, to the Americas, to the Caribbean, to all points in between, was by regular, once lost, now found Ethiopian Hebrews, Israelites. You know what I'm saying? And they didn't have locks. So the first Rastafari were not locksmen, as we would say today, right? And we should not disrespect them. Woe to some of the locksmen them now who grow locks and beard and ting, and they think that the elders who first proclaimed, like even the Leonard Percival Howells and the Pinnacle community, we've heard it from ones and ones. And you probably could find the audios and the video out there where some mind of mine, have disrespected the elders, right? The first proclaimers and the congregation and camps of the first proclaimers, because they did not have locks. Brother, this is not a hierarchy. It's not a hierarchy. Here. You hear me? It's not a hierarchy. It's a divine hierarchy, right? So it's to respect I and I elders, not what particular hairstyle they have or they don't have. Now, what's interesting is that those first proclaimers who did not have locks and also, were following the popular worldly Greco-Roman, shave face way, they didn't have beard either. The next stage of Rastafari, right, was the beard men, because many of them, in taking witness to the man who's a sign and the seal, in his times he shall shew who's the blessed and only potentate, the King of Kings, Lion of the tribe of Judah. They began to recognize, there's a precept, the beard, as they started to study scripts, that the beard is a precept. The beard is a precept, and not to round the corners of one's head. That means that, some of these hairstyles that we have, like you have fade on the side, the fade on the side, or like the army cuts, that is not for I and I. So we get the beard man next. And then as man continued to grow and study and reason and also their research, we had the Mau and different ones. People talk about the Sadhus in India. Yeah, we get that right there. But what's closer to I and I paradigm directly, it's like the Mau. Even the Bahitawi, even closer than that is the Bahitawi. So we have an ancient order even among the Israelites of Ethiopia and the true church and the professing EOTC, Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the Bahitawi. Now, the term Bahit in Ge'ez, it means to be alone. And literally, Bahit, right? Bahiti. If I say in Ge'ez, Bahiti, Ana Bahiti. That's to say in the Ge'ez, I'm alone, right? So that's the idea of separate. So I just point that out because they also grow, right, the locks and have an ascetic, a separate and ascetic discipline, a kind of a monastic discipline right there. So as I and I people, especially the Rastafari, called, chosen, and faithful, started to learn and grow, this is where the real inspiration, right? Now, by comparison, we can see that people around the world in different cultures, right, have locks. Even the mind in certain cultures and orders and discipline do grow their hair, like even among the Far East, right? And the Chinawi, the Chinese and Japanese and other Asian people of the Far East. If you look at some of the old things, even the Buddha and everything, they would have the little bun at the top because they would basically have their locks tied into a bun at the top. So different peoples grew locks for different reasons. Some things are just like we have the ear. We all breathe the air. We all see sunlight. We all laugh. We cry. We eat. All these things we do. So there's some things that are just universal, right? Just to point that out right there. For the Rastafari, you have to recognize the first ones were black man, say woman and child, but black man that did not have locks and even did not have beards. But as they grow and they study the scripts, and as they grew in grace and the knowledge, they recognized, even looking at His Majesty always has the precept. It's interesting. His Majesty and certain ones always keep those precepts, never violate those precepts. But even there were ones around who sometimes, they probably shaved up their face. But, as Revelation says, Revelation says a good word to, ones and ones who he who want to be holy, let him be holy. Here. Next question right here. That was question 12 right there. 13. Name some Nazarites from the scriptures. Can you name some Nazarites in the scripture? Now, of course, one's probably going to name Samson, right? Samson in Judges chapter 13, verse 7. We got Shamson, right? Samson, right? But also, did you know that Shemuel, Samuel, Hannah's, you can say Hannah's boy, right? Shemuel, Samuel. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11, he was a Nazarite, right? And here we are speaking about some Nazarites that according to the scripts here, at least Samson was a lifelong Nazarite, right? Judges 13 and 7. Samuel also appears to be a lifelong Nazarite. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 11. Absalom, did you know that Absalom, David's son, he was a Nazarite. He was a Nazarite. It's an interesting thing in the narrative when you read and you understand what you're reading. In the conspiracy that Absalom had against his father, right? He had a custom. He had long locks, right? And he said that he's going to go to Poll, P-O-L-L, to poll his hair. Polling his hair because his locks were said to be long and heavy. What he would do, he would shorten it. It was a tradition for even those who did have locks to shorten it, especially among the soldiers and the warriors. We would shorten our locks. We would still have our locks, even if we carried our locks as not as a vow, but just as the way we chose to express ourselves. But on the battlefield, when we was going to battle, either we would tie it up or we would shorten it because we don't want, man to try to punk us by grabbing our hair. So, we need to look at those things because somebody say, go to lock long, all the way down to the ground. Yeah, it can be dangerous too. If we real world. So Absalom too, he says to his father, like, yeah, Dad, I'm going to go down to such and such. I'm going to trim my lock. But he was actually conspiring against his father, Absalom. Then if you know the fuller story, David sent his cousin and leader of Joab, the leader of his army. He sent him after him, to bring him back. David didn't want no harm done to him, but some of the mighty men of Israel, the brethren of David, the soldiers of David, they were like, how could Absalom do this, nigga? You the next king. How could you do this, man? So some of them had something in for him, like Joab. But the interesting thing is, he told his father he's going to take some time away so he can, poll his locks, go through his custom of shortening his hair because he is getting rather long. He didn't shave his hair, didn't shave. I know some might say, don't even put no scissors. I know that's kind of your folklore custom. I'm talking about JAH teaching. I'm talking about practice that's verifiable. You know what I mean? But what he did, he lied to his father. And then ultimately, when he was on the run from the army of Joab, who was hunting him down, the intent that David gave them to bring them back, but Joab had an intent, obviously, to kill him, right? So anyway, when Absalom is running away, he get on a donkey or something, and he go into some low bushes. You probably heard about this. And he get caught up in the tree by his hair. How ironic. But Absalom, just to point out that Absalom also appears to be a Nazarite he appears to be a Nazarite as well. John the Baptist was a Nazarite. Yes, Luke chapter 1, verse 15, right? John the Baptist was a Nazarite. And also Paul appears to be a Nazarite. According to Acts, you didn't know, Rabbi Shaul, Rabbi Saul, the apostle to the Gentiles, the apostle Paul, he was a Nazarite. According to Acts chapter 18, verse 18, and also Acts of the Apostles chapter 21, verses 22 to 26. So Paul had the locks too. You didn't know, right? That's what it says, like when you read that portion, Acts 18:18, Acts 21, verses 22 to 26, you'll find that, he said he had a vow on him, and then there was other ones who had a vow on them as well, and they went to fulfill their vow, and they shaved their head. that's the indication, because that's according to Ha-Torah. Next question here. Does the word Nazarite have a connection with the word Nazareth? Does the word Nazirite have a connection with Nazareth? From the KJV, King James Version, ambiguity, it would appear so. But the truth of the matter is no, right? Not a direct linguistic, etymological, direct connection. In other words, they are not from the same root, just to point that out. No, they are two different Hebrew words, and they have two different Hebrew roots. And even in the English, where they spell Nazareth with a Z, like Nazarite with a Z, Nazarite properly has a Zayin. But if I'm correct, I think Nazareth have the Tzadeh, right? When we say Yeshua HaNotzri, Notzri is different than Nazir. Is Nazir Notzri? You see how those two words are different? Notzri, or even Natri, and Nazir. They're not the same. The word Nazir comes from the verb Nazar, right? Nazir comes from Nazar, which means to consecrate or to separate. Whereas the word for Nazarene comes from either two, there's two close Hebrew words, right? One is Netzer. Netzer is branch. Netzer is branch, like a branch, like a branch of a tree, right? A shoot, a branch of a tree, a netzer, right? Or from the verb, right? There's a verb to guard, the verb to guard, or the verb to watch. There's a verb to guard and there's a verb to watch, right? Now, Nazareth was the name of a town that was said to be located in the north of Israel, where Yeshua lived. When the Gospels say, he shall be called a Nazarene, no one will say, see, that's Nazarite. No, read it again. He shall be called a Nazarene. It didn't say that he shall be called a Nazarite. He shall be called a Nazarene. They are not saying that Adonai Yeshua would be an oath taker. Again, when it's written in the Gospels that he shall be called a Nazarene, they are not saying that Yeshua, Robbeinu, Einai Rabbi, the Rabbi of Rabbis, Black Lord and Savior, Yeshua HaMashiach, would be a oath taker, or vow maker, but rather that he is the promised branch of Yahweh, according to Yeshayahu, Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1. So the connection with when it says he shall be called a Nazarene, right? That is connected with Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1, the branch of Jehovah. One more question, basic question right here. Was Yeshua HaNotzri, Jesus of Nazareth? Was he a Nazarite? Was Jesus of Nazareth a Nazarite? Well, he may, based on what we know and what the scriptures say. We could imagine whatever we want to, but based on what the evidence says, the best we can say is that he may have taken the vow at some point. There's nothing specific that he took the vow. One says, well, he was because he's of Nazareth and Nazarene. Well, obviously you need to get into the Hebrew and the study Chabarim and don't misinterpret based on the KJV ambiguity, right? But he may have taken the vow at some point. But he was not a lifelong Nazarite within that sense, or a Nazarite from birth. There's nothing in the scripture that says that when Mariam, Holy Mary, when she had him, she did like Hannah. Hannah basically made a vow on his behalf. And we know Samson also was said to be a Nazarene, and they raised him as, a Nazarite, and they raised him as a Nazarite, right? Why would we say this? Well, you remember Yeshua, he touched the coffin of the widow's son. You remember? He went with the dead body when he raised it. You recall that right there? According to Luke chapter 7, verse 14, right? He also visited Lazarus Elisar's grave. He visited Elisar, Lazarus's grave, right? And according to what we read in the scripture, he presumably drank wine. And it seems as though he kind of liked to drink wine, right, on a certain level. I mean, not to in moderation, but we know what they said, behold, a wine bibber, a glutton, and all of that, they said, Matthew 11:19. So we just hope that kind of maybe clarifies. Of course, I know the more reasonments to come forward, right? As we mentioned, that Nazir, is related to the word crown, right? Nazir is related to the word crown, right? There's some advanced questions as well. You can look that up, the H53. Where is it? Right here? H5342. But we'll get to the advanced questions. Just want to touch a little bit more on the Nazarite and the Nazarene right there. Oh, yes, sir.
Conscious down. Don't be afraid, go your train and touch on the ground. Remember your answer, say win up your ass, then I know. Long time me take, me not a rainbow. Win up your ass, then I know. Long time me take, me not a rainbow. The first time me know say Rastafari legit is when me take a little bit in a Numbers chapter 6. Me read Revelation, I was astonished to know the mark of the beast that is 666. Me check Samson and John the Baptist. Them blow them not the jet, make it long like with. Oh, me start to grow up and me dread some more when me start read Ezekiel 44. So me not found, me not your rest, they are snow. Long time me take, me not a rainbow, me not found, me not your rest, they are snow. Long time me take, me not a rainbow. Some people are spread propaganda, but not clear is a sin. But me challenge anyone, I me know them can't win, cause they need it. Them show me the Bible say, man, we got to make it, them scissors and comb, make them cut off everything. I me not found, me not your rest, they are snow. Long time me take, me not a rainbow.
Yes. There's more on this as well, brothers and sisters. Nazir, the Nazir and the branch. So let's read and look a bit more on that. Yeshua Ha-No-Tui, that man who is the branch of Jehovah. Right here, brothers and sisters and brothers, we have today's daily Psalm 39, just to touch on it briefly right here. Yes, sir.
Shalom, Chavarim. Here we have today's daily Psalm. We have Psalm 39. I said, I will take heed to my ways that I sin not with my tongue. I will keep my mouth with a bridle while the wicked is before me. I was dumb with silence. I held my peace, even from good, and my sorrow was stirred. My heart was hot within me while I was musing the fire burn. Then spake I with my tongue. Lord, make me to know mine end and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. Behold, thou hast made my days as an handbreadth, and mine age is as nothing before thee. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. Selah. Surely every man walketh in a vain show. Surely they are disquieted in vain. He heapeth up riches, and knoweth not who shall gather them. And now, Lord, what wait I for? My hope is in thee. Deliver me from all my transgressions. Make me not the reproach of the foolish. I was dumb. I opened not my mouth, because thou didst it. Remove thy stroke away from me. I am consumed by the blow of thine hand. When thou with rebukes dost correct man for iniquity, thou makest his beauty to consume away like a moth. Surely every man is vanity. Selah. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear unto my cry. Hold not thy peace at my tears, for I am a stranger with thee and a sojourner, as all my fathers were. O spare me, that I may recover strength, before I go hence and be no more, 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 and be no more.
Shema Yisrael, he Midrash, Mizmor Lamed 8. Psalm 39, 39, 39, 39, 39, 39, 39, 39, 39, 39. Shema Yisrael, he Midrash, Mizmor Lamed 8. Psalm 39, a Midrash on today's psalm. Lamnatseach, li ditun, li dutun, Mizmor le'asaf. Amarti, eshmera derakai. Meya Hato Vilshoni Eshmera Lefia Mahsom Bi Oda Rasha Le Negadi Le Negadi. For the leader, for Jedutun, a psalm of David, I said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not, that I uck up not with my tongue. Lamnatseach Li Dutun Mizmor Le David. For the leader, for the chief musician, Lamnatseach, Li Dutun, the Kare, Li Dutun, the Kati, Li Ditun, Li Detun, Mizmor Le David, a psalm of David. Amarti, 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 I said, Amarti, Eshmera derakai, I will take heed to my ways. Eshmera derakai, Meyachito Vilshoni, that I sin not. May chito vil lishoni, be lishoni, that I sin not with lishoni, with my tongue. Lamnatseach li dutun mizmor lit David. Amarti eshmera derachai, may chito vil lishoni. Here, opening verse, Aleph verse, first verse Hebraically. David's meditation, David's agitation, is to be considered in the light, the illumination, what Scripture says elsewhere, even in the Mishle, Shlomo, in the Mashal, in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1, where it reads, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Ma'inne rak. Yashiva chema udevar ezev ya'le'af. A soft answer, a soft answer. Ma'inne rak, turneth away wrath. Yashib chema. Ma'inne rak. Yashib chema. A soft answer turneth away wrath. Ma'inne rak. Yashib chema udevar ezev. But a grievous word, debar etzeb, ya'ileh af, stirreth up, ya'ileh, causes to rise up, ya'ileh af, anger. Ma'ineh rak, yashiba chema, debar etzeb, ya'ileh af. An evil tongue is more grievous than idolatry. An evil tongue is more grievous than idolatry. Bamidbar, in the wilderness, when the Bnei Yisrael sinned, when they upped up and made the golden calf, so-called the molten calf. When the Bnei Yisrael upped up and made the molten calf, it was only after they had also sinned, upped up with their mouths, that the decree of their punishment was sealed. As is said even in Devarim, in Deuteronomy 1 and 34, the Lord heard the voice of your words and was wroth. Yahweh Jehovah heard the voice of your words and was wroth and was wrathed. Vayishma Yahweh et kol divrechem vayikatof vayishavah lemor. And Jehovah heard the voice of your words Wayishma'a Yahuwah et kol divreikem, and was wroth. Wayiktof, Jehovah heard, he who be heard. Wayishma Yahuwah, the voice of your words. Et kol divreikem, and was wroth. Wayiktof. And as is also said, even in Bamidbar in Numbers chapter 14, verse 28, as I live, saith the Lord, surely as y'all have spoken in mine ears, so will I do to you. Amor Elehem, Chayani Anum Yahuwah, Im lo ka'asher dibartem bi'aznai, ken e'eset lachem. Say to them, Amor Elehem, say to them, Chayani Anum Yahuwah, as I live, Chayani, as I live, Anum Yahuwah, saith he who be, the oracle of he who be, Anum Yahuwah, Im lo ka'asher dibartem bi'aznai. Surely as y'all have spoken in mine ears, Im lo ka'asher dibartem bi'aznai, so will I do to you. Kain e'eset lachem, so will I do to you. Kain e'eset lachem. Amor Elehem, Chayani Num Yahuwah, Im lo ka'asher dibartem be'aznai, Kain e'eset lachem. Say to them, Chayani Num Yahuwah, as I live, oracle of he who be, surely as y'all have spoken in mine ears, so will I do to you, so will I do to y'all. Mark that the verse, Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 14, verse 28, that the verse here does not say, quote, y'all have wearied Jehovah with your deeds, end quote. The verse does not say that y'all have wearied Jehovah with your deeds, but it says, y'all have wearied Jehovah with your words. Even here, Malachi chapter 2, verse 17. Y'all have wearied he who be, with your words. Hogaitem Yahuwah bi divreichem. Y'all have wearied he who be. Hogaitem Yahuwah with your words. Bi divreichem. Hogaitem Yahuwah bi divreichem. Y'all have wearied Jehovah with your words. Similarly, it is written even in Isaiah 3 and 8, for Jerusalem is ruined and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against the Lord. For Jerusalem is ruined and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings are against the Lord. Ki kashla Yerushalayim, we Yehuda nafal. Kia lishonam u'ama aleihem li Yehuwah. Lamrota ainaya kavodo. For Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, is ruined. Ki kashla Yerushalayim, and Judah, Yehuda, is fallen. We Yehuda nafal, because their tongue, ki lishonam, and their doings, u'ama aleihem, are against he who be, are against Jehovah, Eli Yehuwah, to provoke the eyes of his glory. Lamrota aineya kavodo. Kia kashla Yerushalayim, we Yehuda nafal. Kia lishonama u'ama aleihem Eli Yehuwah. Lamrota aineya kavodo. And again, even in Jeremiah and Ermias, Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 8, it reads, my heritage has become to me as a lion in the forest. She have uttered her voice against me. Therefore have I hated her. My heritage is become to me, as a lion in the forest. She have uttered her voice against me, against I. Therefore have I hated her. Therefore have I hated her.
Haitali Nachlati K Arye Vayar Natana Alaya Bi Kolaha Alkin Sinetiha. My heritage is become to me, is become to I. Haitali Nachlati, as a lion, K Arye, in the forest, Vayar, she hath uttered her voice against me. Natana alai bi olaha. Natana alai bi olaha. Therefore have I hated her. Al kain sinetiha. Haitali nachlati. Ka'aye vayar. Natana alai bi olaha. Al kain sinetiha. Here, a little commentary here on the Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 8. The King James Version reads it as this: mine heritage is to me as a lion in the forest. It crieth out against me. Therefore have I hated it. Now, Bamarin in the Metzaf Kedus, we have Riste Bedor and Dala and Besa, Hona Binyalich, Dimswan, Anissa Tabinyalich, Silazi, Telechatalo. So here, even the Metzaf Kedus, the authorized Amharic Bible, the revised Amharic Bible, the Book of the Seven Seals of the Conquering Line of the Tribe of Judah, the Root of David, brings it out, as well as the Hebrew. In the Hebrew, Hebraically, what we have right here, the Hebraist in the Hebrew says, Haitali nachlati k aye vayar, k aye vayar. It says, my heritage is become to me. Haitali nachlati. Bamarinya riste bedor and dale, right? My heritage, right? My heritage bedor in the forest, bedor and dale is like anbesa. Now anbesa here, like ke arye vayar or ke arye bayar in the ya'ar in the forest. So the arye here, we can have Lebona in the Hebrew. We can have Anbesa Situ here. The Anbesa, or the Aryeh, Hebraically, is now qualified by the verb that brings out Hona Binyalich, the Haita Li Nachlati, Ke Aryeh Vayar. Here we have Natana, she gave, or she give, Natana, alai, against me, against I, Bi Kolaha. So here the kolaha with the final hey brings out her voice. We have kolo, his voice, bi kolaha, by way of her voice. Natana, alai, she gave against I, bi kolaha. Here, Bamarinya, the Metzaf Kedus, the Book of the Seven Seals, Dimswan, Anista Binyalich, she has lifted up against me, Dimswan, her voice, corresponding with the Masoretic here in Yeremiah, Jeremiah, Ermias, Natana, Alai, Big Olaha, Al Kain, therefore, or upon, like on for sure, the sense of therefore, Bamarinya, Silla, because Z is Z, because of this, Al Kain, Sinetiha, Silla Z, El Chatalo, I have hated, repulsed, I have hated her. So here, the Hebrew brings it out, the Metzaf Kedus, the Royal Amharic brings it out. The Hebrew translation here into the English is, my heritage has become to me as a lion in the forest. She has uttered her voice against me, against I, therefore have I hated her. This is covered up by the KJV, where instead of her, has it. Also, what is not brought out, we're looking at the KJV right here, says, my heritage is to me as a lion in the forest. It crieth out against me. The Hebrew and the Royal Amharic, the Book of the Seven Seals, the Metzaf Kedus, emphasizes her voice. Bamarinya in Amharic, Dimswan. Dimswa. In the Hebrew, Bikolaha. Her, Kolaha. By way of her, against I, by way of her voice. She has uttered her voice. This is not brought out fully. It cries out. Against me. She
she hath uttered her voice against me. She, dimswan, anista binyalech, natana alai bikolaha. She gave against I by way of in her voice. She uttered her voice against I. Al-Kain, therefore, sinetiha, Al-Kain, sinetiha, silazi, elchatalo. So here, just bringing this sense out right here, the context of it that often does not get fully translated, right? The male and the feminine, the divine double helix, as we call it, aspects. That's very important to understanding and receiving the true spirit, the spirit of the word. But does Adonai, does Yahweh, Jehovah hate Israel? But does Jehovah hate Israel, hate Israel, his heritage, because of her voice? Here, the question. But does Jehovah hate Israel, his heritage, because of her voice? Rather, does he not love her? Does he not love her because of her voice? As is said even in Shir HaShari, Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 14. Let me hear thy voice. Make I hear thy voice. Is it not written? Hashema'ini eta kolech. Make I to hear thy voice. Hashema'ini eta kolech. Kolech. Speaking to she. Hashema'ini eta kolech. Let me make I hear thy voice. Hashema'ini eta kolech. Does he not love her because of her voice? As it is written, Hashema'ini eta kolech. The fact is that he loves her because of her voice, and he hates her because of her voice. The fact is that he loves her because of her voice, and he hates her because of her voice. Say then that, according to Mishlei Shlomo, the Mashal, Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Say then that death and life are in the power of the tongue. Mavet v'chayim b'yad lashon. Death and life. Mavet v'chayim. Mawet v'chayim. Mavet, death. Mawet and chayim, and life and lives. Maweta v'chayim b'yad, in the power, or b'yad, in the hand. B'yad lashon. B'yad lashon. Death and life are in the hand of the tongue. Maweta v'chayim b'yad lashon. Mavet v'chayim. Mawet v'chayim. Death and life. Compare Ecclesiastes 37 and 18. Good and evil, life and death, and that which ruleth over them continually is the tongue. The moral here, cautious speech may preserve life, as rash talk can imperil it. Mawet v'chayim b'yad lashon. And here, Metzaf Kedus, the Metzaf Misale, chapter 18, verse 21, Bamarinya. Motna hiwet be'melas ij nacho. Death and life. Motna, death and hiwet, and life, be'melas, in the tongue, ij, in the hand of the tongue. Be'melas ij nacho, they are. Motna hiwet be'melas ij nacho. Al-Kin, Silazi. Therefore, I said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue, that I uck up not with my tongue. Amarti, Eshmera derakai, meyachito vilshonni. I said, Amarti, I said, Amarti, Eshmera derakai. I will take heed, Eshmera derakai. I would take heed to derakai, my ways. Meychito, from uckery, from sin, that I sin not, from sin. Vilshoni, lishoni, by way of my tongue, from sinning. Meychito, vilshoni. Amarti,
Eshmerad Rakai, Meyachito Vilshoni. It happened once that a king of Persia was about to die. As he grew exceeding weak, his physician said, "There can be no remedy for thee until they bring thee the milk of a lioness, that thou must drink until thou art healed." So Hamelech, the king, the king sent his servants who took much money, enough money with them, to Solomon, to Shlomo, ben Dawid, son of David. Thereupon Solomon sent and summoned Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, whom he asked, "How can we get the milk of a lioness?" Benaiah replied, "Give me 10 she-goats." Then Benaiah and the king's servants went to a lion's den, in which a lioness was giving suck to her whelps. The first day he stood afar and threw 1 goat to her, that she devoured, she ate up. The second day Benaiah came a little nearer and threw another goat. And thus, like this, he continued day by day. At the end of 10 days, he was close to the lioness, so that as he played with her, he touched her dugs and took some of her milk and went on his way. Then the king's servants went back to Solomon. He dismissed them in peace, and they went on their way. While they were midway in their journey, the physician, who was with the king's servants, had a dream in which he saw the parts of his body arguing with one another. The feet were saying, "Among all the parts, there are none like us. Had we not walked, he would not have been able to fetch any of the milk." The hands replied, saying, "There are none like us. Had we not touched the lioness, he would not now be carrying any of the milk." The eyes said, "We are of greater worth than any of you. Had we not shown him the way, nothing at all would have been accomplished." The heart spoke, saying, "I am of greater worth than any of you. Had I not given counsel, you would not have succeeded at all in the errand." But the tongue spoke up and said, "I am better than you. Had it not been for speech, what would you have done?" Then all the parts replied, saying to the tongue, "Art thou not afraid to compare thyself with us? Thou that art lodged in a place of obscurity and darkness, thou indeed in whom there is not a single bone such as there is in all the other parts?" But the tongue declared, "This very day you are going to acknowledge that I rule you." As the physician woke up from his sleep, he kept the dream in his heart and went on his way. He came to the king, to Hamelech, to the Negus, and said, "Here's the milk of a bitch, which we went to fetch for thee. Drink it." Immediately, Hamelech, the king, the Negus, the king became angry with the physician and ordered that he be hanged. As he went out to be hanged, all the parts began to tremble. The tongue said to them, "Did I not tell you this day that there is nothing to you? If I save you now, will you admit that I rule you?" They said, "Yes." Then the tongue said to those who were about to hang the physician, "Bring me back to the king." They brought the physician back to the king, and he asked the king, "Why didst thou order to have me hanged?" The king replied, "Because thou broughtest the milk of a bitch to me." He asked Hamelech, the king, the Negus, "What does that matter to thee? It will cure thee. Besides, a lioness can be called a bitch." The king then took some of the milk and drank and was healed. And so, since it was proved that the milk was the milk of a lioness, the physician was dismissed in peace. Thereupon all the parts said to the tongue, "Now do we confess to thee that thou rulest all the parts. Of this it is written, even in Mishlei, even in the Proverbs, Mishlei Shlomo, Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue." Motana hiwet bemelas ij nacho. Maveta vi chayim biyad lashon. Death and life, mawet with chayim, are in the power, biyad, in the hand, biyad lashon. Maweta with chayim, biyad lashon. Motana hiwet bemelas ij nacho. And so David declared, Amarti eshmerad rakai meyachit o avil shoni. I said, Amarti, I said, I will take heed to my ways. Eshmerad rakai, that I sin not, that I uck up not with my tongue. Meyachit o bil shoni. Behold, what the tongue offers is better than all other offerings. As is said even in Psalm 69, Hebraically, verse 31 to 32, I will praise the name of God with a song, and will magnify him with thanksgiving. And it shall please the Lord better than that bull calf or bullock that hath horns and hoofs. I will praise the name of God with a song, and will magnify him with thanksgiving. And it shall please the Lord better than that bull calf or bullock that hath horns and hoofs. Here, Mizmor Samek 8, Psalm 69, Psalm LXIX, Mizmor Samek 8. Hallelujah, Shem Elohim b'shir, va gadleinu v'toda, v'titav la Yahuwah mishor par markin mafris. I will praise the name of God with a song. Hallelujah, Shem Elohim b'shir, and will magnify him with thanksgiving. Gadleinu b'toda, and it shall please Yahuwah Jehovah better than that bullock, better than a bullock. V'titab la Yahuwah mi shor par, that hath horns and hoofs. Makrin, mafris. Ehallah Shem Elohima b'shir, wa gadleinu b'toda, v'titav la Yahuwah mi shor par, makrin, mafris. If it was a bull calf, how could it be a bullock? And if a bullock, how a bull calf? The verse, it means, however, that what the tongue offers pleases Yahuwah Jehovah even more than that bull calf that Adam offered in place of a bullock for thanksgiving, saying, even here, according to Psalm 92, Hebraically the second verse, it is good to give thanks to the Lord. Tov lehodot la Yahuwah, it is good, tov, to give thanks, lehodot, to Jehovah, la Yahuwah, tova lehodot la Yahuwah. Adam's offering took place on Yom HaKippurim, on the Day of Atonement, and corresponded to the service of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, the Like Kahanat. Of that, it is said even in Wayikra, Leviticus chapter 16, verse 3. Herewith shall Aaron come into the holy place with a young bullock for a sin offering. Bezota yavo Aharon illa hakodesh befar ben bakar le chataata ve'ayila le'olah. Herewith shall Aaron come into the holy place. Bezot yavo Aharon illa hakodesh, with a young bullock. Bifar ben bakar, for a sin offering. Lechatat, for a sin offering. And a ram for a burnt offering. Ve'ayil le'olah. Bizota yabo Aharon illa hakodesh bifar ben bakar lechatat ve'ayil le'olah. by the words that had horns and hoofs, by the words markin, mafris, that had horns and hoofs, is meant that the bull calf that Adam offered had horns before he had hoofs. And here, Midrash note, the theory was that fully formed animals emerged out of the ground, and so they had horns before they have hoofs, some say. Here, Midrash note. For the verses to be read, that had horns and then hoofs. That had horns and then hoofs. Over there, it was taught. Here, Midrash note, over there, that is in Palestine. Over there, it was taught. The bull calf that Adam offered had one horn in his forehead. For what the verse really says is a bull calf that had a horn, makrin, and hoofs, mafris. Note that makrin, mem, kof, resh, nun. As written, it calls for the pronunciation of mikoran, meaning it had one horn. Mikoran, meaning it had one horn. And here, Midrash note, the absence of the yod, the absence of the yod, in the hifil form, makrin, is taken advantage of to achieve this tour de force, Hebraically speaking. So instead of reading as the Masoretic makrin, there's the absence of a yod in the hifil form of makrin. And thus here, note that makrin is written, Masoretically calls for the pronunciation of mikoran, which would mean it had one horn. Ehallah Shem Elohim Bishir. I will praise the name of Elohim with a song. Ehallah Shem Elohim Bishir. And will magnify him with thanksgiving. Why Gadaleinu Bitoda. Why Gadaleinu Bitoda. And will magnify him. Why Gadaleinu, with thanksgiving and giving of thanks. Todah. And it shall please Jehovah. With Titav La Yahuwah. And it shall please he who be, Jehovah, better than that bull calf. With Titav La Yahuwah. Mishor, par, or bullock that had horns and hoofs. Makrin, mafris. Ehallah Shem Elohim Bishir. Why Gadleinu Vitoda. Vititab La Yahuwah. Mishor par. Makrin, mafris.
Elohim missionary soldiers in the army, who no righteous apostles serving the Almighty, could rally round that room, rally round the justice sound, cause that soon I must go down, and justice wear the crown. Justice will be ready now. Justice, now it is.
Another comment on for the leader, for Jedutun, Lanatseach, Li Dutun, Jedutun, Yidutun, refers to the profession of judges and their judgments. Lanatseach, Li Dutun, Yidutun, Jedutun, refers to the profession of judges and their judgments. Here, Midrash note on today's Psalm Mizmor Lamed Tate, Psalm 39, Psalm XXXIX. Here, the word Jedutun, Yidutun is here derived from dat, or judgment. decree. The Hebrew dat, judgment or decree. Here, the name, the word yedutun is here derived from the Hebrew dat, judgment, decree, dat. Therefore, the Mizmor continues, I will take heed to my ways that I sin not with my tongue. Eshmera derakai, meyachito villashoni, meyachito, be lashoni, so as not to pervert judgment. And another Mizmor, another psalm, namely Psalm 119, verse 23, reads, even though princes sit and talk against me, thy servant doth meditate in thy statutes. Even though princes sit and talk against thy servant doth meditate in thy statutes. Gam yashvu sarim bi ni dabaru avdeka yasiach bechukeka. Even though also princes sit, gam yashvu sarim, and talk against me, I, be niya devaru, gam yashvu sarim, be nidabaru, thy servant abdeka doth meditate, yasiach, in thy statutes, bechukeka, Tama yashvu sari, bi niya debaru, abdeka yasiach, bechukeka. I will keep a curb upon my mouth. Here, eshmera lefi machsom. Eshmera lefi machsom. I will keep a curb upon my mouth. Is there such a thing as a curb for a man's mouth? The verse means, however, I shall keep silent and not occupy myself with idle words, only with words of Torah. I will keep a curb upon my mouth. Eshmera lefi machsom. These words, they mean, I shall keep silence and not occupy myself, not occupy with idle words, only with words of Torah. God's direction, instructions, words of Torah. So too, it is said, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life. Even here in the Mishlei Shlomo, Proverbs of Solomon 15:4. Marpe lashon eitz chayim. A wholesome tongue. Marpe lashon, a healing tongue. Or here a soothing tongue. Marpe lashon, a wholesome tongue. Eitz chayim is a tree of life, a healing tongue. Marpe lashon, eitz chayim, tree of life. Eitz chayim, meaning Torah. Eitz chayim, tree of life. Eitz chayim, meaning Ha-Torah, meaning the Torah, God's directions, instructions. Here in the Hebrew, marpe lashon, a soothing tongue, a wholesome tongue. Literally, Hebraically, when it is a tongue that heals, marpe lashon, soothes the feeling of the person it addresses, is wholesome, is healing to the person it addresses. Eitz chayim, a tree of life, to the man who has such a tongue. Marpe lashon, eitz chayim, meaning Torah. From this you learn that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's the Holy One, the sanctified, the set apart, the Isla One, Baruch Hu, blessed be He, gave HaTorah, the Torah, the directions, instructions, the teaching of His Majesty, gave HaTorah to the Bnei Yisrael, to the Israelites, to the children of Israel, to the Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, that they should not busy themselves with idle words, nor be busy with evil tongues. So the Mizmor the psalm says, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not, that I uck up not with my tongue. Eshmera derakai, meyachitoa v'leshoni. So, too, Scripture says, even in Devarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7, these words, thou shalt speak them. These words, thou shalt speak them. V'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi nitzauka hayom ala le'vaveka. And these words, ha'devarim ha'ele, and these words that I command thee, I this day, shall be upon thy heart. V'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi nitzauka hayom ala le'vaveka. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 6, here, verse 7. Ve shinantama levaneka, ve dibarta bam, ve shivateka, ve beiteka, uva uve lekateka, uva lekateka, va dereka, uve shakavetka, uve shakabeka, uve kumeka, and thou shalt teach them diligently to thy children. Shinantama libaneka, and thou shalt teach them diligently. Shinantam libaneka, to thy sons, to thy children. Dibarta bam, and shall talk and shall speak. Dibarta, speaking bam in them. Dibarta bam. Bishibateka, when thou sittest beiteka, in thy house. Ua belekateka, and when thou walkest baderek, by the way. Ua beshakabeka, and when thou liest down. Ua bekumeka, and when thou, the eye, risest up. Shinantama libaneka, dibarta bama, shibateka, beiteka, ua lekateka, baderek, ua shakabeka, ua kumeka, and thou shalt teach them diligently. Shinantam libaneka, to thy children, and shall talk of them. Dibarta bam, shall talk, speak bam in them. Dibarta bam, these words, Dibarim ha'ele, shinantam, teaching diligently. Dibarta bam, speaking in them. That is, thou shalt speak words of Torah, of Jah's direction, instruction, the teaching of his majesty, not slander nor idle words. Likewise, David asked, who wishes to have life in the Olam Haba, in the world to come? And they replied, no man can have it. David replied, but it can be had, and at a low price. When scripture asks, who is the man that desires life? When scripture asks, who is the man that desireth life? Who? Here, Mizmor Lamed Dalet, Psalm 34, verse 13. Mi ha'ish he'chafetz chayim. Who is the man that desireth life? Mi ha'ish he'chafetz chayim. Mi ha'ish. Who is the man? Who is the ish? Mi ha'ish he'chafetz chayim, that desireth he'chafetz, life, chayim. Mi ha'ish he'chafetz chayim. The question, it means, who is he who wants, who seeks life in the Olam Haba, in the world to come? And they ask, but How can one have such life, such chayim? David answered, by keeping thy tongue from evil. Nitzora lishonka me ra'a. Keeping thy tongue from evil. Nitzor lishonka. Nitzor, keeping, guarding. Nitzor lishonka, thy tongue. Me ra'a. Nitzor lishonka me ra'a. Keep thy tongue from evil. Here, second part of Psalm 34, verse 14. That is from slander. Of that it is said, stilled be the lying lips that speak against the righteous. Stilled be the lying lips that speak against the righteous. Mizmor Lamed Aleph, Psalm 31, Hebraically verse 19. Te alamna sifte shaker ha dovrot al tzadika atak be gaewata wa buz. May the lying lips be dumb. Te alamna sifte shaker. May the lying lips be dumb, stilled. Te alamna sifte shaker. May the lying lips be stilled that speak against the righteous, who speak arrogantly against the righteous. Ha dobrot al tzadika atak. Telamna sifte shaker. Ha dobrot al tzadika atak. Bigalata vavuz. Stilled be the lying lips that speak against the righteous arrogantly, with pride and contempt. Lips that prevent thee from ever saying, according to the words of Mizmor Lamed Aleph, Psalm 31, verse 20, oh, how abundant is thy goodness that thou hast laid up for them that fear thee, I. Ma rabatuveka asher safanta li reka.
Yes. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Thunder salam. A full right there on today's or the previous psalm. As here we're moving forward to Shabbat day, the 7th of the 7 Shabbats, counting complete. We've counted 49 days. Shabbat shalom, send it salam. There's a word right here on the quote from Psalm 34. Did you hear? Psalm 34 in connection with the Nazir and the Naziress, Nazir, the Nazar and the Natsar, the Nazar and the Natsar. It was in verse, verse 14 here in the Hebrews, verse 14, it might be 13 in the KJV Bibles. It's the quote where it says, keep thy tongue from evil. All has to do with when it says that how David had asked who wished to have life in the world to come, and they said that no man can have it, and David said, but it can be had at a very low price. When scripture asks in Psalm 34 and 13, so these two verses, when scripture asks, who is the man that desireth life? Me, Haish, me, who, Haish, who is the man? Who is the man? He chafetz, to desire Chaim, life. Literally in the Hebrew, Chaim, when we say life, is actually lives. It's a plural sense. Chaim would be like lives, in other words. So the question is, Mi haish, he hafetz, Chaim, who? And then David here, right? Here, to this question means who is he who seeks life in the world to come? And they ask, well, but how can one have such life, such Chaim? And David, he answers here, even in the Psalm of David, Psalm 34 and 14, by keeping. See the word keeping? Hear the word keeping? By keeping thy tongue from evil. So here, according to the Royal Order of Ethiopian Hebrew, Psalm 39, and here, according to I, the line of the tribe of Judah, the sabbatical studies, the Torah reading and feeding, 35th Torah portion, we have the Nazir, the theme of the Nazir, the Nazirite, and also the connection is there between Yeshua being of Nazareth, Yeshua HaNotzri, Nazareth, and Nazarene. But here, the connection with HaNotzri. We say HaNotzri both means Nazareth in the Hebrew, both means branch, right, as a noun. But then the root word, right, in the verb sense means to guard, to keep. And here's a perfect example. I'm trying to give it a little earlier when we went through the synopsis, but here, verse 14, the Hebrew, nitzor. Here we have nitzor. So it's not ze, but it is right? I think some Hebrews nowadays, not really overstanding, they put like TZ, tazah. You won't say tazah. But actually in the Afro-Shemitic Hebrew is sa or su, si, sa, say, so. Here we have nitzor. Nitzor is like a command. So I say to a man, I say nitzor, like to guard. Nitzor, guard. So we have nitzor lishon ka, guard the eye, male tongue. Nitzor lishon ka, lishon. In the good is we have lisan. In the Hebrew we have lishan, right? Lishan, right? Lishon in the Hebrew, lisan, the tongue. So here, nitzor lishon ka, may from ra'a, or that ra'ra. Guard your tongue from all that rah-rah, and thy lips from speaking God. Oh, sifateka, mi dabir, mi from dabir. They say abra, kadabra. You know, what you create, what you speak. Oh, sifateka, mi dabir, mirma. And thy lips. So the verb both governs the first and the second part of the verse. Nitzor. We get the natzah. We say Yeshua HaNotzri, Yeshua of Nazareth. So you both have the branch of Nazareth, the reference Notzri to branch, and also to guarding. And here's a perfect example in Psalm 34, Hebraically the 14th verse. But we seal up right here. Keep thy tongue from evil. Nitzor, guard, Nazar, right? The Nazar in the new covenant sense. Nitzor, lishon kame ra'a. Guard your tongue from all the rah-rah. The sins, the uckeries are, we mature here, right? We growing, mature. The fuckeries, fornication, the crime of the king, the fuckeries, the falling short, the missing the marks, the fuckeries of the tongue are severely denounced in the Hebrew, in I Hebrew ethics. Because mawet v'chayim, beyad, lashon, death and life, mawet v'chayim. Beyad, the yad is a hand, right? Lashon, the hand of the tongue, the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21. Lying and slander are deemed by the sages, Rabbanim, the sages, and especially by Robenu, Rabbi Joshua HaMoshiach, especially hateful. It's especially hateful to highlight him to the power of the true good, the true God. This verse right here, from Psalm 34, Hebraically the 14th verse, this verse begins a beautiful meditation. It's an meditation. This verse right here, keep thy tongue from evil, from rah-rah, and thy lips from speaking God. Keep, guard, in the sense like Nazareth, in the sense. Nitzor lishon ka me ra'a'u sifateka mi dabir mirma. This verse here, itaful meditation that's included in the Judaic liturgy for daily use. Yes, Rastafari. Shabbat Shalom, Send Salam. Looking forward to the Shabuot. Feast, the festival of weeks. Yes, I have a beautifully good Shabbat, strength, life, and health. B'Shem Yeshua HaMoshiach. Yes, I. Shabbat Shalom, Habarim.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.